Chapter 17:14. Rumble. Blood rain poured down, and thunder rumbled. Not only the Sage Monarch region, but the 36 regions were also covered by blood rain in a very short time. Cold winds blew, and angry roars could be heard everywhere. Heaven and earth were crying, and Providence was declining. Lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled, and the sky darkened. It was as if the world had been destroyed. Everyone's heart was shrouded in a layer of haze. This aura was too strong. It was far stronger than any other time. Jiang Taishu, who was in Xuanyu, suddenly looked up, seeing this strange phenomenon. Even though he had expected it, he was still so shocked that he trembled all over. My lord, even if a god descends to the mortal world, he's not even 1,000th of you. Since ancient times, even if one person on the talent saint list died, it would cause a great impact on the entire sacred boundary. However, there had never been such a large number of saint talents dying in history. Lin Shen would undoubtedly cause a great change in the sacred boundary once this battle began. In the vast space tunnel, as a fortune teller, Heartbreak Red immediately reacted, and his expression was full of surprise. This strange phenomenon, could it be the so-called death of the talent saint list? The Yinyang Saint King, who belonged to the Alliance, was shocked. The location of the death of many saint talents came from the Sage Monarch region. Could it be that something had happened to the Alliance? But that was impossible. With the 10th person on the talent saint list, even 8 saint kings could not kill so many saint talents. Although the talent saint list was young, it was not that easy to kill them. Just who was it that could have such terrifying power? The 1,000 Fox Saint King was shocked. There was only one person who could do such a thing. Lin Shen, the usually calm Heaven and Earth Saint King, was shocked for the first time. No, how could this guy have arrived at the Alliance earlier than us? He was still in Xuanyu just now. Suddenly, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He was in Xuanyu just now? No, they only saw multiple Lin Shen, but they were not sure which one was the real one. Could it be the Heaven and Earth Saint King and the 1,000 Fox Saint King looked at each other at the same time, almost thinking the same thing? In fact, his main body had not returned to Ice Heart Palace at all. Perhaps he had been heading straight for the Genesis headquarters from the very beginning. Stealing from each other. What a great way to steal from each other. Good job, Lin Shen. You're really something. Full speed ahead. The Yin-Yang Saint King roared. He was afraid that something would happen to his saint genius nephew. In the Martial God Clan's divine martial hall, several elders were whispering to each other. Young Master Wu Pianju has regained his confidence and is going into seclusion. He should be very clear about his current state. After losing the god's blood, no matter how much he secludes himself, it's useless. Perhaps it's the last bit of stubbornness. In the past, he was awe-inspiring, but now his reputation had been swept to the ground. Who would have thought that this would be the end of my Wu clan? Even as the elders sighed, a rumbling sound could be heard as the outside world began to show signs of chi flow drying up. Whoosh! A beam of green light descended from the sky. The Wu family's ancestor immediately appeared in the hall with a solemn expression. The Saint Talent leaderboard has been massacred. There's a huge change in the Genesis era. We have to prepare to move out in advance. Wu Clan, ultimate martial realm. Countless sage materials and weapons hung in the air. Only one person was sitting cross-legged in the air. It was Wu Pianju, who had already fallen. He held a jade-green Rui scepter in his hand, and his expression was one of hysteria and excitement. It's getting weaker and weaker. Father's God's blood is getting weaker and weaker. Wu Pianju's handsome face was contorted, but there was an unusual agitation. Ha, Lin Shen, oh Lin Shen, it's not far now. What bullsh asterisk T Genesis, Holy Purgatory, and Lin Shen. They're all trash. There's only one step left, and I can trample all of you under my feet. Ha ha ha. Wu Pianju's maniacal laughter reverberated throughout the realm. It was hair-raising, somewhere in the heavenly divine region. The pure energy of a 9 yin and 9 yang was like 2 dancing dragons. It lingered in the surroundings and turned into streams of dragon aura, which entered the dozen figures sitting cross-legged here. Rumble. The changes in providence in the outside world quickly affected this place. What? The true dragon, Saint King, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Although he did not care much about the Alliance's sage talents, there was no precedent in history for so many of them to fall at once. Something big must have happened to the Alliance. Things have changed. Stop healing for now, the true dragon Saint King said coldly. The people who were healing immediately stopped. This group of people were the peerless experts imprisoned in the eye of hell in the holy purgatory. They had more or less sensed the upheaval in the Alliance. They were not interested in the Genesis era's survival. What they were interested in was the person who was challenging the Alliance. This person was qualified to be their opponent. The true dragon Saint King said coldly, "Quickly go to the Genesis Alliance and capture the enemy. This is your first mission." Without any hesitation, the group teleported from the Heavenly Sage Domain to the Sage Monarch Domain, outside the Alliance headquarters. A flying knife swept up a knife light, and peach blossoms flew, cutting down the sages. A flying knife was as fast as lightning, and everything in its path turned to ashes. Lin Shen's two doppelgangers were crushing the experts in the Genesis era's headquarters. First, they had the advantage of a sneak attack. Second, the experts of the Genesis era had either gone out to suppress other regions or had more important matters to attend to outside the sacred boundary. As a result, almost no one could stop Lin Shen. If it had been an ordinary Sage King, or even two ordinary Sage Kings, the Alliance headquarters would have been able to withstand the sneak attack. After all, the half-step Sage Kings representing the 12 ninth-rank sects were here. No matter what, they had many trump cards in their hands. They could completely suppress the situation. But the one who came was Lin Shen, this monster. His movements were insanely fast, and his attacks were ridiculously powerful. If one's defense was broken by his attacks, not only would they not be able to heal, but they would also be more seriously injured. There was even a surprise internal explosion. In addition, the two doppelgangers used instant light doppelganger. Each of them could attack 10 times in one move. He was even using a sneak attack. Who could withstand this? 5 doppelgangers inside the barrier and 2 outside. Lin Shen had used all of his doppelgangers. As long as the Sage Dragon was still in the Ice Heart Palace, he could know the situation there at any time. Moreover, the Sage Dragon was not as weak as his doppelgangers. Even if he was attacked by a Sage King, he would not die immediately. If anything happened in the Ice Heart Palace, Lin Shen could rush back. Therefore, he dared to go all out. This sneak attack had severely injured the upper echelons of the Genesis Alliance. They could not completely carry out their plan with only their top combat strength. The strength of these upper echelons was indispensable. Lin Shen's doppelgangers went crazy on the spot. The 42 sage geniuses present were all wiped out. Not a single person could escape. Lin Shen treated everyone equally, regardless of gender. As long as they joined the Genesis era and attacked mortals, they were all treated equally. Attribute light balls and a large number of attribute treasure chests floated in the air. Lin Shen even released his doppelgangers to collect them for him. And the harvest is not bad. These sage geniuses have a lot of good things on them. Each of them is filthy rich. Most importantly, there are 3 sage geniuses who are in charge of the core, elixir resources, and sage artifacts of the Genesis era. Lin Shen's doppelgangers smiled knowingly. This was equivalent to half of the Genesis era's resources falling into Lin Shen's hands. If you touch my people, I'll F***CK your Genesis era. Ing Jiufeng, this is just the beginning. Chapter 17:15. The entire Sage Monarch domain fell into boundless darkness. The sky collapsed, and the earth trembled as if the end of the world had arrived. The entire human race's providence seemed to be declining. Every time the blood rain increased, the speed of the decline of providence increased. Host has received 20,000 Saint-tier cultivation technique soul essences, 9,900 top-tier heavenly Tao points, 10,000 lightning-type energy points, 2 billion set essence points, 19 million mid-tier strengthening points, 1 billion Saint-tier vitality points. Host has received 1 orange-tier talent treasure chest, 1 special divine material fragment, 2 Saint-tier equipment hint coupons. Suddenly, Lin Shen's primordial spirit clone touched an ancient treasure chest surrounded by orange-yellow light. Host has received a cultivation technique exclusive treasure chest. Open to receive 1 top-tier orange-tier cultivation technique fragment, 3/3. Host can integrate it at any time. After integration, Host will randomly receive a top-tier orange-tier cultivation technique. There were all kinds of attribute treasure chests dropped by the fallen Saint Talents on the Saint Talent list. Some were even comparable to Sage Kings. There were even attribute fragments of top-tier orange-tier cultivation techniques. After all, none of the Saint Talents were simple. Every Saint Talent was the most precious and special talent of the human race. Lin Shen's massacre on the Saint Talent list was equivalent to breaking the rules and declaring war on the entire sacred boundary. At this moment, the Genesis headquarters was completely turned upside down by Lin Shen's 2 clones. The 100 heavenly palaces that had been built earlier were all destroyed. The underground city had all turned into a pipe dream. The powerhouses and the headquarters were either dead or injured. All living beings were equal in front of Lin Shen. Inside the headquarters barrier, Ying Jiufeng's handsome face flashed with rage. You actually have clones? Lin Shen laughed mockingly. When a dark horse appears, it will attack from behind. Caring for the chrysanthemum region behind you is a must for me to be a dark horse opponent. It seems like you don't know me well enough. Ying Jiufeng's veins were bulging. He felt like he'd been played by all sides. The information he received clearly stated that Lin Shen could only use 5 clones. He clearly saw that Lin Shen had used 5 clones before he used his trump card. He didn't expect to be played. Could it be those 9 guys? Only then did Ying Jiufeng realize that she had been tricked. It was obvious that only Qian Yingxue and the other 9 sages who had left the Genesis era had concealed this information. This guy definitely had more than 5 clones. I want you dead. I don't care if you live. Ying Jiufeng's body was covered in 9 auroras. His fan spun like a tide, with 9 auroras lingering around the fan. The entire space of the array formation began to tremble violently. The dazzling reddish-gold blade light spun at an extremely fast speed and expanded rapidly. The sharpness of the blade light grew fiercer and fiercer. At this moment, the 4 Saint Kings were shocked. There was no mistaking it. It was definitely one of the legendary orange-tier martial arts. There were very few orange-tier cultivation techniques left in the human race's sacred boundary. As powerful as the Saint Talent ranking was, there were only a handful of people who possessed a complete orange-tier cultivation method. Even the Path of Hell that Wu Pianju had used when she was on the brink of death in Lin Shen's superspace and time was only an incomplete top orange rank cultivation technique. Run! Ying Jiufeng is going to kill him. This kid is finished. Damn it. If we use this move here, we'll be crippled too. The 4 Saint Kings cursed as they fled, retreating without regard for anything else. The 4 of them even joined hands to form a defense and retreat to the edge of the array formation space. One had to know that Ying Jiufeng, who had activated all of his divine Burr bloodline, was already a monster among monsters. Normal Saint Kings could not even last a few rounds against him. With the 4 of them together, it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Normal Saint Kings would not even have a complete corpse if they used a top orange rank cultivation technique in such a state. Buzz, a ray of 9-colored holy light, appeared in Lin Shen's palm and finally condensed into a ball of 9-colored starlight. Ying Jiufeng was so angry that he laughed. Is this your strongest attack now? I'll take it. Lin Shen smiled playfully. I'm afraid you won't be able to take it. As soon as he finished speaking, Ying Jiufeng waved his fan horizontally, and hundreds of golden talismans appeared out of thin air. The golden talismans released a dazzling golden light, and the reddish-gold blade light shot out like a storm toward Lin Chun. Great Compassion Creation Curse. 9 Tribulation Star. Lin Chun threw his palm toward the sky, and the 9 Tribulations star fell from his hand and turned into 5 beams of 9-colored light. Buzz. Kaboom. At this moment, the array formation space shook. Outside the Alliance headquarters, those powerhouses who had been attacked had not found Lin Chen's clone to deal with the sudden attack, but their pupils constricted again. The surface of the array formation that was surrounded by the Red Phoenix actually started to tremble and crack. Crack, crack, crack. The array formation that was enough to trap 10 Saint Kings actually started to crack. Countless powerhouses had the same question in their minds at the same time. What kind of fierce battle had broken out inside this array formation? The cracks increased until finally, the array formation space could not bear the burden and exploded. A terrifying gust of wind suddenly erupted from the array formation space and crushed all the buildings within 1,000,000 miles of the headquarters. Mountains and rivers were crushed by the aftermath of the collision, and the ground collapsed. Many of the Alliance's powerhouses who had rushed over to help were blasted far away. No one could imagine just how terrifying the power of the center of the array formation was. As far as the eye could see, there was only a huge reddish-gold wind blade storm and a 9-colored light pillar that was blooming between heaven and earth. As the 9-colored light pillar rotated, it annihilated all objects and energy that came close to it. Lin Chen's figure retreated quickly, and he looked a little disheveled. A ghastly hole had been torn in his star-chasing heavenly mourning robe. 4 doppelgangers protected Lin Chun as the 5th doppelganger was destroyed by the shockwaves of the collision. Ing Jiufeng looked down at his right arm, where a thumb-sized wound had split open. He had actually been injured by the attack. Moreover, the wound on his arm was still expanding, and he could not heal it no matter what method he used. The other 4 Saint Kings were also covered in cuts and scars. They quickly retreated and affectionately greeted Lin Chun and Ing Jiufeng's family along the way. Buzz. At this moment, space suddenly stopped. The expression in Lin Chen's eyes changed. The aftermath of the collision between his and Ing Jiufeng's Great Compassion Creation Curse was second only to the extent of the Godslayer's injury to the Divine Dragon clone. Such violent energy had actually been stabilized. The Azure Spirit power was like a horizontal line of aurora, condensing into countless strands of spirit power, which began to divide and dissipate the energy of the collision. Whoosh! The void of space rotated, and countless wind eyes appeared. A terrifying hurricane erupted in the center of the wind eye, swallowing the stars and absorbing the violent energy of the collision. Then, space trembled, and a powerful spatial force was transmitted, stabilizing the energy of the wind eye. What smooth coordination, and they're all experts. Lin Chun thought to himself, could it be the founding Century Alliance's hidden trump card? The clones were immediately on guard, and the rune energy was rapidly consumed, quickly replenishing the saint power that the clones had just consumed. Seeing this, Ing Jiufeng frowned and said, "Why did you take so long to come? This kid has caused the Alliance headquarters to suffer a lot of losses. You have to bear the main responsibility." Hey kid, do you think you're a big-faced person just because we give you some face? We're not your servants. Don't tell us what to do. The 9 divine bird bloodlines are indeed very powerful, but you have to become a god before you can teach us a lesson. You're just a fledgling now. When the energy shockwaves from their collision dissipated completely, 17 figures appeared in the void. The leader was the true Dragon Saint King. This was the first time he saw Lin Chen's true body, and he narrowed his eyes. This is the first time I've seen a Saint King with Saint power without opening his Saint acupoint. This kid is the first. Although he was an enemy, he had to admit it. This little guy was the most outstanding human he had ever seen, bar none. Chapter 1716. When Lin Chun looked up, other than the true Dragon Holy King's oppression, The other 16 people gave him a very subtle but extremely dangerous sense of danger. The residual energy of the 9 tribulation star and the great compassion world creation curse were dissolved by these people. A cold-looking man in white waved his sleeves, and with heaven and earth as a seal, his 10 fingers formed a seal that froze the air. Still void, the space was gradually being completely sealed. From the Genesis headquarters to the extreme east of the Sage Monarch domain, almost all the space had become an absolute cube, and no one could enter or exit. This was an eye-opener for everyone in the Alliance. This spatial divine art is several levels stronger than Ling Er's. Lin Chen's heart sank. Judging from the appearance of this group of people, there were men and women of all ages, but without exception, they were all true old monsters. Some didn't even have a complete human form, but they gave Lin Chen a piercing pain from his primordial spirit. Whoosh! Lin Chen's 2 illusory doppelgangers returned, and a phantom divine light descended. Lin Chen's 7 doppelgangers heavily protected his main body. Intuition told Lin Chen that this group of people was extremely dangerous. The slightest carelessness would result in death. This kid is Lin Chen. His courage is commendable, daring to go against the flow. He has some of my demeanor back then. What a pity, what a pity. Haha. His only mistake is meeting us. The 16 of them sized up Lin Chen with gazes filled with amusement, ridicule, curiosity, jealousy, and amazement. It was as if they were looking at a prey in a cage. Lin Chen suddenly laughed. You want to fight me when you haven't recovered from your injuries? The beautiful woman in the lead chuckled, and her beautiful eyes flickered with a hellish black light. She smiled and said, Little guy, we don't need to be at our peak to deal with you. Lin Chen raised an eyebrow. So confident? As they chatted, Lin Chen's gaze finally landed on the cold-looking man and the elegant young man with an evil temperament at the back of the group. Their sword intent broke the universe, and their saber intent suppressed the 9 heavens. In terms of attainments in Sword Dao and Saber Dao, he had completely surpassed Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun. Lin Chen even had an intuition. If it was a one-on-one fight, he might not be able to defeat either of them without using the War God set, even if he was surrounded by his doppelgangers. Especially when he noticed their unique 9 killer seals. Lin Chen suddenly asked, You're from the Holy Prison? Why didn't I see you when I went in? As soon as he said this, everyone's expression became very interesting. This little fellow had actually entered the Holy Prison. Why hadn't they heard the true dragon Saint King mention this before? Tao Yao Yao, who was wearing a peach robe and had a supple waist, smiled charmingly. We are imprisoned in the Holy Prison's Eye of Hell. It's on the 19th floor, and it's even deeper. At this time, Ying Jiufeng deactivated her bloodline and transmitted her voice to True Dragon Saint King. He might not be able to use the killer move that destroyed the Holy Prison. Kill him, dead or alive. As long as we take him down, the people around him won't be able to do anything. True Dragon Saint King's eyes lit up. This kid had lost the killer move that prevented him from destroying the Holy Prison. True Dragon Saint King immediately looked at everyone and said calmly, Your injuries and strength have recovered by 80%. It is time for you to do your best. After he finished speaking, he looked at the white-robed Zhou Baichuan. The latter's cold appearance nodded slightly. The space has already been sealed. Clap, clap, clap. Lin Chen clapped his hands and said with a mocking smile, Good, very good. I didn't expect to meet so many people in this trip. It's really interesting. Lin Chen's abnormal behavior made True Dragon Saint King laugh instead of getting angry. What? You're about to die, and you've gone crazy. Die. Lin Chen laughed. No. I don't have any strong points or specialties. It's just that my entire body, including my life, is very tough. The toughness of one's life is directly proportional to one's handsomeness. With my title as the most handsome person in the sacred boundary, none of you can take my life. Clap. Lin Chen snapped his fingers, and a green light descended from the sky. It bathed his body and his clones, and they all disappeared in an instant. Host activated hyperspace dimension. 70,000 top talent points consumed. The moment Lin Chen disappeared, all the powerful cultivators present were dumbfounded. Even Zhou Baichuan, who had a cold and arrogant expression and absolute confidence in his space technique, almost had his eyes pop out of their sockets when he saw this scene. What's going on? How did he get past his space dimension divine skill and escape? That's impossible, unless a true god made a move. But even if a true god made a move, they would have to break through his space dimension seal first. His space dimension seal was still intact. So how did he disappear? All the elites looked at Zhou Baichuan at the same time. True Dragon Saint King's eyes flashed with killing intent as he stared at Zhou Baichuan. Zhou Baichuan's mouth twitched when he sensed everyone's gaze. Hey, why are you all looking at me? F*CK. Are you all suspecting that I went easy on him? True Dragon Saint King said coldly. We didn't really go easy on him, did you? Zhou Baichuan stomped his feet in anger. F*CK. You can insult my personality and handsomeness, but you can't insult my cultivation technique. Go easy on him? If you don't believe me, try to see if he can travel through the void. If he can tear through the void, I'll poop upside down. Who knows? Maybe you secretly strengthened it after he escaped. F*CK. What the F*CK? Did you all say anything? The enemy is right in front of you, and you dare to collude with him? Beat him up. What the F*CK? That's right, beat his face. It wasn't easy to lure the enemy's leader here, but you actually let him go. Zhou Baichuan was surrounded and beaten up by the other elites. Ying Jiufeng's face was gloomy. Lin Chen actually had such a technique. If that was the case, the next time they met, they would have to break that technique to kill him. Otherwise, they would never be able to kill this kid. But now there was still a mess to clean up. Lin Chen's heavy blow to the Founding-era alliance was like a hammer to the head. A large number of Saint Talents on the Saint Talent ranking had fallen, and Ying Jiufeng would definitely be held accountable by the forces behind those Saint Talents. Moreover, countless powerhouses had been involved in the battle between him and Lin Chen, causing irreversible and untreatable injuries. These people were the backbone of the alliance. Without them, the Founding Era would not be able to operate completely. In addition, the alliance had lost nearly a quarter of its Saint Talents, so they would have to stop most of the things at hand. This technique was really a stalling tactic. Ying Jiufeng secretly made up his mind. The best defense is offense, right? Lin Chen was more like a venomous snake. He would take revenge for every move he made, and he would do it immediately. This kind of person is more dangerous the longer I stay. Next time, it will be my turn to use my trump card to destroy him. Ice Heart Palace. Lin Chen's figure appeared beside Shenglong. This time, the servants sensed the heavenly cycle seal of life and death in Lin Chen's primordial spirit and finally confirmed that Lin Chen's original body had returned safely. My lord, Zhang Taishu said in surprise. The phenomenon on the Saint Talent ranking just now. Lin Chen nodded and smiled. I did it. It was just a greeting gift to them, plus some interest. What a heroic spirit. Massacring 42 Saint Talents on the Saint Talent ranking was unprecedented in history, and it was just a greeting gift. At this moment, all the servants were filled with a heroic spirit that would last for eternity. Following such a master, their injuries were not in vain. Chapter 1717. Lin Chen looked at Fei Wushuang and Fairy Crimson with a smile. Beauties, I'll have to rely on you to heal me. Lin Chen looked around and said loudly, We'll wait for everyone to recover before we move. The corners of his mouth rose wildly as he smiled wickedly. Now it's time for all of you to soar. All of you to soar? Hearing this, everyone's morale soared, and their eyes lit up. Since the Lord had spoken, he would definitely not go back on his words. Of course, this includes the friends who have followed my servants. Lin Chen, will not treat you unfairly. After the healing is over, you are free to move, and you can choose to leave or stay. I will also give you corresponding rewards. After all, you were injured because of me. Lin Shun transmitted his voice to everyone in the Ice Heart Palace and Divine Flame Palace. Then, he looked at Yu Wangsheng and threw him a few Providence plant pouches. I got these from the Genesis Alliance. They should be helpful to you. When Yu Wangsheng's primordial spirit entered the Providence plant pouch, he said happily, "Pill recipes from the Pill God family. And there are 3 scrolls of 9th grade pill recipes." The value of a 9th grade pill recipe was comparable to a high-grade orange tier cultivation technique. It was no wonder that Yu Wangsheng was so surprised. Although he had now broken through the ranks of the 9th grade, it was still quite difficult to create a 9th grade pill recipe. Naturally, you would not let go of a ready-made recipe. Lin Shun ignored the excessive consumption of saint power and stepped into the Ice Heart Palace. He said bluntly, "Those who follow me, I will let my doppelganger give you the rewards. There's no need for pleasantries. You have to take it even if you don't want it." The reclusive old monsters who followed the servants looked at each other and cupped their fists respectfully. "Thank you, Your Excellency Lin Shun." Lin Shun gave half of the Providence plant pouches he obtained from the Genesis Alliance to his doppelganger and entered the Ice Heart Palace with the servants. Lin Shun first used the Yinyang Divine Dragon's immortal creation bloodline ability to heal the main servants on the 19th and 18th floors. Half a day later, Fei Wushuang, Yu Wangsheng, Jiang Taishu, and the others were the first to recover to their peak state. Lin Shun said bluntly, "Taishu, from today onwards, with me in charge, you don't need to hide the aura of the entire team anymore. Focus on deducing the movements of the Founding Era Alliance and confusing the other side's fortune teller." As soon as he said this, Lin Shen's servants exclaimed in surprise again. Too domineering. Under the premise that Lin Shun did not conceal the members of his team, any first-class fortune teller would be able to deduce the position of Lin Shen's team based on clues. This was undoubtedly a message to the enemy. Bring it on. There was only one thing that stood out. Face it head-on. Yes. Jiang Taishu cupped his hands, his eyes burning with a strong fighting spirit. With that, he would be able to fight heartbreak red head-on. Lin Shun looked at Long Jiushan, and with a push of his palm, a treasure box appeared. He smiled and said, "Jiushan, take this opportunity to improve your strength and injuries." When Long Jiushan received the time treasure box, he was overjoyed. "Divine bone marrow, and there's so much of it. My lord, you're so strong." Long Jiushan had estimated that at most half of the divine bone marrow in this treasure box, there would be more than a 50% chance of him becoming a body-refining Saint King. Now, there was twice as much as expected. If he still could not become a Saint King, he might as well kill himself. Moreover, the second absorption would not be as painful as the first absorption and refinement. Instead, it would be very beneficial and extremely useful. Lin Shin smiled and said, "When the time comes, my Saint Dragon will assist you and speed up your refinement." Long Jiushan said excitedly, "Yes, Long Jiushan, will not come out of seclusion until I become a Saint King." Lin Shin laughed and scolded, "Damn you, then when I'm pressed to the ground and beaten up, will you come out of seclusion?" Long Jiushan immediately straightened his back and shouted, "This time, I'll consider staying on the 5th level. In the entire sacred boundary, no one can press my lord down and beat him up. Only my lord can press others down and beat them up, so I can be at ease and enter seclusion until I become a Saint King." Lin Shun, "I hope that the bookstores in the sacred boundary will have your books, or I'll smash them." As soon as this was said, the Ice Heart Palace burst into laughter. After Long Jiushan went into seclusion, Lin Shun instructed them to take action. There was no need to migrate, and they would first heal everyone before moving. In terms of defense, his 7 clones stood in each direction of Xuanyu. They were like overlords. Who would dare to break in? Ice Heart Palace's seclusion mystic realm. All the seclusion mystic realms and planes were related to a certain sect medium of the sect. Taking away the sect medium, one could establish a spatial passage to the mystic realm at any time and even move with them. With a thought, Lin Shin opened the system. Heavenly Tao Possession System version 8.0 Host Lin Chun Cultivation 5th Heaven Saint Realm Saint Grade Essence 1762.25 billion points. Limit 510,000 Venerable Energy Flesh Shell Awakening plus 500%. Saint Grade Blood Chi 1.9904 billion points. Saint Grade Spiritual Energy 999 billion. Peak Early Stage Nascent Soul Saint Grade Cultivation Essence 11 million. Saint Grade Rune Energy 24.08 million. Peak Heavenly Tao Points 22.99 million points. Peak Talent Points 72.86 million points. Set Essence 2,912 billion points. Mid-Grade Strengthening Points 92 billion points. Saint Grade Elemental Energy 3.89 million points for Fire 2.99 million points for Earth 2.33 million points for Wood 3.66 million points for Metal 3.54 million points for Water 5.67 million points for Lightning 5.46 million points for Wind 5.46 million points for Light 6.43 million points for Darkness. Set Column 5 pieces of the Golden War Gods set, incomplete. Special Treasures, Peak Orange Cultivation Technique Fragment, 3/3. Saint Weapon Upgrade Voucher, 1/3. Divine Material Fragment, 1/3. Unique Talent Treasure Chest, for or more treasure chests will definitely drop a high-grade orange talent. There's a small chance of a peak orange talent or a one-time use peak orange talent. There's a high chance of a peak orange talent in 10 treasure chests. Talent Column, Bloodline Status Column, Cultivation Technique Status Column, Life Awakening Column, Killing Technique Column, Unique Rune Column, Godhead Column, Divine Elephant 2 of 3, Godhead Fragment, Cooldown, 168 days before activation. Lin Chen's attributes soared once again. Most importantly, his peak orange cultivation technique fragment had been maxed out. Lin Chen's heart skipped a beat. No one would be able to remain calm when a peak orange cultivation technique appeared. Others possessing a peak orange cultivation technique and Lin Chen possessing a peak orange cultivation technique were two completely different concepts. His strengthening ability and instant light split shadow could teach an enemy of the same level a lesson. Currently, my strongest attribute is my holy power, followed by my primordial spirit, and then my physique tempering strength. Please don't give me any primordial spirit or physique tempering cultivation techniques, Lin Chen gulped. Unlike purple cultivation techniques, orange cultivation techniques could not be fused into a peak orange cultivation technique. If he wanted to use the fusion function to fuse a peak orange cultivation technique, he would need a large number of low-level cultivation techniques. Cultivation techniques that were intermediate orange cultivation techniques could only be found in rank 8 or rank 9 factions, and they were in short supply. If he were to use the system's fusion function, he would need close to 100 intermediate orange cultivation techniques to fuse into a peak orange cultivation technique. A peak orange cultivation technique was already one of the rank 9 sect's ultimate techniques. What did it mean to have 100 intermediate orange cultivation techniques? There was only one possibility, and that was that Lin Chen had robbed 1/10 of the rank 8 sects in the sacred boundary. Some sects' cultivation techniques were passed down from elders to disciples, or by facts from the higher-ups. They would not use the original cultivation technique to learn and cultivate. If he wanted to fuse a peak orange cultivation technique with numbers, then the sacred boundary would only have a lunatic who would pick fights with rank 9 sects every day, and it would have to be the kind that would annihilate them. Lin Chen shook his head and laughed. Brother Chun, oh Brother Chun, you want to fuse a peak orange cultivation technique with numbers? Forget it. Don't think about it. You'll hurt your brain. Chapter 17-18. In short, this was the only way for Lin Chen to obtain a top-tier orange-tier cultivation method. System. I want to fuse technique fragments. Host has chosen to fuse top-tier orange-grade technique fragments. Beginning random synthesis. In the system space, an orange-colored vortex began to spin, and the three jade-like fragments began to fuse. Lin Chen clenched his fists. He was so nervous that he stopped breathing. 2 hours later, Lin Chen was still nervous. He didn't dare to breathe. 4 hours later, Lin Chen was eating roasted gluten. 6 hours later, Lin Chen was digging his nose. 8 hours later, Lin Chen affectionately said, "I'll lead you to fight." 10 hours later, Lin Chen said, "Why aren't you done yet? I've already finished 2 novels. Can't you put in more effort?" 12 hours later, Lin Chen said, "It's fine if this technique doesn't suit me." 14 hours later, Lin Chen said, "Square root, finally, ding." The system made a crisp sound, and Lin Chen shuddered. "It's here. It's here. Synthesis successful. Host has obtained top-tier orange-grade technique, annihilation, star explosion." Technique summary. It's an extreme offensive technique. If you want to use this technique, you'll have to cut off your own path of retreat. Use your life to stimulate all the saint power in your saint acupoints and condense it into annihilation, star explosion. Simple and clear. This top-tier orange-grade technique ignored cultivation. Regardless of whether one was a saint king or a heaven-opening realm cultivator, using this technique would use up all the saint power in their saint acupoints. It was simple and violent. One move would determine victory and defeat, life and death. If there was any saint power left in the saint body, this technique would backfire on the user. Therefore, there was no turning back for this annihilation star explosion. It could only be used with full force. Lin Chen frowned. If he used this technique, all the saint power in his saint acupoints would be used up. He knew very well how miserable a saint would be without saint power. Even someone as strong as Lin Chen could only rely on pills and other limited methods to recover his saint power if he didn't have saint power. Suddenly, Lin Chen felt like he was struck by lightning. "I'm a fucking genius." That's right. Why did the main body need to use the annihilation star explosion? He could just let his clone use it. The phantom doppelganger was created using rune energy. Although he could also use gold saint origin coins to replenish his saint power, Lin Chen mostly used rune energy to replenish it. It was fast and efficient. As long as there was rune energy, Lin Chen's avatar would be the strongest man. No matter how many times he did it, his stats would be satisfied, and his clone would be awesome. Good fellow, there's no time to lose. System, integrate the annihilation star explosion. The host has begun fusing with a top-tier orange-tier cultivation method, consuming 900,000 saint-tier cultivation method essences. Lin Chen's current cultivation technique essence was sufficient. Even an orange-tier cultivation technique wouldn't pose a problem to him. 7 days passed in a flash. Xuanyu, Kangmang River. One of Lin Chen's illusionary doppelgangers stepped on the boundless river. He suddenly opened his eyes and smiled. Friends come from afar, greet with a big sword. You guys didn't come from afar just to enjoy the scenery, right? I've always liked to be straightforward. Why don't you show yourself? The raging waves of the Kangmang River suddenly stopped. 12 people stepped out of the void. Oh, Lin Chen raised his eyebrows. The 4 people in the lead were 3 men and 1 woman. Some of them had eyes that seemed to be filled with electricity. They were stocky and strong, surrounded by electric snakes. Thunder dragons roared above their heads, and their saint power shook the universe. Some of them were cool and confident. Their saint acupoints were surging and whistling, as if a saint acupoint was hiding an apocalyptic storm. The 2 on the left were women in red robes. Their temperaments were flirtatious, and their waists were as slender as a snake. Their jade-like hands were holding a jade fan made of white bones, and they covered half of their faces. Their beauty was faintly discernible, and there was a biting, cold, murderous intent in their beauty. The last one had a cold expression. His face was as cold as an eagle's, and his brows were as sharp as knives. When he looked down at Lin Chen, his brows were full of arrogance and disdain. There were 4 saint kings. As for the other 8 people, there were men and women, old and young. Without exception, they were all half-step saint kings. Previously, Jiang Taishu had used his divination to hide the entire team. But now, Jiang Taishu was focused on deducing the movements of the Genesis era, and the team was completely exposed to the eyes of the various forces. This team was sent by the rank 9 forces of Xuanyu, Battle Region, Guyu Region, and Song Region to warn Lin Shun, because Lin Shun's team was located at the intersection of the 4 regions. Once any conflict or battle broke out, they would be the first to be affected. The leader in black robes said coldly, "Your Excellency, what are your intentions for arranging so many strong people in Xuanyu? I'm the Saint King of Kunlun, and I represent the Kunlun sect to order you to lead everyone out of Xuanyu. You can't stay for even one more day." Lin Shun was not angry. Instead, he laughed. "Are you telling me what to do? My people are in Xuanyu, and they haven't done anything evil. Why do I need you to order me to leave?" A murderous look flashed across the Saint King of Kunlun's cold face. He said in a low voice, "It's not your turn to argue. Kid, the battle that broke out here a while ago has already destroyed many of the rank 9 sects cultivation mystic realms. I don't trust you." Whoosh! Lin Shin's clone flicked his finger, and 2 Providence plant pouches floated in the air. He smiled and said, "This is an apology. My people will leave after they finish healing." "No." A Saint King with lightning dragons circling around him shouted coldly, "You're a disaster here. Get out of here." Lin Shin sighed. "Why is it that every time I want to have a good talk, there are always people who like to cause trouble?" Lin Shun kept the Providence plant pouches and said, "My people will leave sooner or later, but it's not your place to tell me what to do. I've already given you face. If you don't like it, come at me." Lin Shun smiled mockingly and said, "I've always been a virtuous person. I respect the old and love the young. I hope that you won't be too ruthless." Kaboom! He activated his cultivation technique, and 100 hexagonal stars shone. Lin Shun released a huge amount of pressure around him. Saint King Jiumei, who came from the Green region, giggled. "Little brother Lin Shun, we're not scared. Put away your power. We have 4 Saint Kings and 8 half-step Saint Kings. If you want to fight, it means that you're going against most of the forces in Xuanyu. Are you sure you've thought it through?" Suddenly, Lin Shin's clone had a look of enlightenment. It was as if he had been enlightened and was reborn. He raised a finger and smiled. "One move. If you can take one move from me unharmed, I'll leave with my people immediately. Otherwise, if you can't do it, don't interfere with my business." Arrogant. The Grand Supreme Elders and Chief Deacons of the rank 9 sects couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. This young man was way too arrogant. If the 12 of them really joined forces, unless the opponent was 7 Saint Kings or above, there was no way they could defeat them. Among the 4 Saint Kings, a handsome Saint King in green robes raised his head and drank a mouthful of strong wine. He wiped the wine stains with his sleeves and smiled viciously. "Young man, you're facing most of the rank 9 forces in the 4 regions. If you fight, you'll offend the top forces in the 4 regions." Lin Shin raised his eyebrows. "Don't talk nonsense with me. I can fight the Holy Prison, the Martial God Family, and the Founding Century Alliance. Why would I be afraid of people from the 4 regions? This place is too small. Let's fight somewhere else." Chapter 1719. Lin Shun waved his hand, and the space opened. He raised his eyebrows at everyone. "Come in and fight. Bring it on. I'll let you know the difference between heaven and earth in one move." This prince really wants to see how strong the new talents of this era are. Everyone is bragging about how amazing they are. 8 half-step Saint Kings and 4 Saint Kings stepped into the space plane at the same time. In a world of ice and snow, this was one of the seclusion dimensions of the Ice Heart Palace. It was perfect for battle. Just as everyone arrived, zap! Lightning danced in the air, and thousands of bolts of lightning tore through the sky, turning into a rolling thunder dragon. The hot-tempered thunder punishment Holy King grabbed the air, crushing the space, and attacked Lin Shun. Bang! 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 Ice and snow rolled up, and the wind blew clouds. Lightning spread. Lin Shun stepped on the clouds, and his body flew in the sky. The thunder dragon destroyed everything in its path, shattering a large number of glaciers, and lightning destroyed the world. Don't attack rashly. This kid's movement technique is not simple. The Kunlun Holy King narrowed his eyes, and the contempt in his eyes disappeared. The clouds dissipated, and Lin Chen's clone smiled playfully. So hot-tempered. Immediately, his eyes shone with a strange light, and a rare excitement appeared. The half-step Holy Kings subconsciously tightened their butts. Damn it, what is this kid trying to do? This kind of look was like the look of a bored child who had found a new toy. Saint Power out. With a cold shout, Lin Chen's shoulders shook. The sky changed, and a terrifying tide of Saint Power surged like a huge wave. 50 Saint points and 50 virtual Saint points surged with hurricane-like Saint Power. Lin Chen's blood seemed to be burning fiercely, blazing like the sun, and red clouds rose. At this moment, the four Holy Kings' eyes narrowed. They could feel that all of Lin Chen's Saint Power was gathering in extremely fast speed and leaving his body. It was as if he was staking everything on this. Elder, he laughed and said, a Holy King sent himself to my door. I can't let him go this time. Everyone was stunned. Holy King, sparring? How could this brat be so arrogant to such an extent? Throughout the entire sacred boundary, who would dare to say that the Saint Kings were used as sparring partners? The exquisite charm Saint King waved her jade-like hands, and pink flower petals filled the air. She was no longer as calm and composed as before. Instead, she was ready to fight. The green-robed Holy King shouted coldly. He wants to use all of his Saint Power in one go. Something's not right. Buzz! Above Lin Chen's head, a ball of light that looked like a flickering lantern rose. Dazzling like the polar star, multicolored, gorgeous, beautiful, and filled with absolute killing intent. The four Saint Kings felt the fear of death as they looked at the lantern-shaped ball of energy. At that moment, all of Lin Chen's Saint points had been emptied of their Saint force, leaving not even a trace behind. In the next moment, the 9-colored starlight trembled and split into 5. Lin Chen suddenly clenched his fist, and 5 balls of beautiful starlight instantly bloomed. Star explosion. The 5-colored starlight suddenly exploded. Not good. Defend with all your might. The 12 of them had anticipated this. They each used their own unique techniques, and many Saint Light avatars instantly formed. At that moment, the 12 of them were completely in a state of cooperation. They did not have their own thoughts. If they did not work together, there was a risk of death. Chi! Boom! Starlight bloomed, and heaven and earth returned to chaos. Xuanyu, near the Kangmang River. Boom! 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 The space trembled violently for hundreds of times, and a powerful shockwave spread to nearly half of Xuanyu. Although it did not affect Xuanyu, it left a bone-deep fear in the strong cultivators of Xuanyu. They did not know what had happened, but if this energy had erupted from Xuanyu, there would have been countless deaths and injuries. The Kangmang River surged with angry waves. The 12 of them were in a sorry state as they floated in the air. That move just now had directly blasted the entire realm into nothingness. A few of the half-step Saint Kings were even injured, and their expressions were full of shock. This was under the premise that they had joined forces to defend, but they were still injured. However, Lin Chen did not intend to kill them. This attack did not trigger the Annihilation Rupture skill. It was a show of strength, and also a chance for him to test his skills. Saint King Juemei's beautiful eyes were filled with admiration and awe as she stared at Lin Chen. It was too scary. If any of them had faced that move alone, they would most likely have died. There was almost no chance of survival. If they had reacted a little slower, even the 4 of them would have been injured. It was definitely a top-tier, orange-tier technique. But the problem was that even if the 4 of them practiced top-tier, orange-tier techniques, they would not be able to unleash such power. Just who the hell is this guy? Lin Chen's clone was ecstatic. Too powerful. This was a top-tier, orange-tier technique. Its power was infinitely close to the 9 Tribulation Star. But Lin Chen could only use the most powerful technique, the 9 tribulation star, once in a short period of time. As for the annihilation star explosion, as long as Lin Shun had enough rune energy, he could use it as many times as he wanted. However, Lin Shen's clone had to be in peak condition in order to unleash such power. In battle, the clone would use up Saint power, and its power would decrease accordingly. However, the most important thing was that Annihilation Star Explosion was still in fortified zero state, and it was only enhanced by Supreme God Possession. Ambilight Support Effect was only suitable for advanced orange rank techniques and below, and Annihilation Star Explosion was not within its range of application. If the Annihilation Star Explosion could be strengthened, its power could be increased by several levels. System: Restore the Phantom Doppelganger. Consumed 400,000 points of Sacred Tier Rune Energy to replenish the clone's Saint power. 400,000 points. Lin Shen's current rune energy was only about 20 million points. Using it once was equivalent to using up a clone. Seeing that Lin Shen's Saint power had recovered to its peak condition, the 4 Saint Kings were completely stunned. What kind of monster was this? Recovering Saint power was as easy as eating and drinking. That was the Saint power of 100 Saint points. Did he think it was just 1 or 2 Saint points? The green-robed Saint King exclaimed, as expected of the guy who dared to challenge the Genesis. I admit defeat. Lin Shen laughed mockingly. Why? Do you want another round? Next time I won't be merciful. Everyone's mouth twitched. This was called being merciful? You're ruthless. The 4 Saint Kings bade farewell one after another, and the 8 half-step Saint Kings also fled resentfully. In the seclusion plane of the Ice Heart Palace, Lin Shen's original body opened his eyes and said with satisfaction, I've just finished cultivating, and I already have a sparring partner. Without a doubt, this Annihilation Star Explosion will become my strongest killing move in the near future. If I use this move in the state of the God Slayer, even someone as strong as the Dragon Tribe's Heavenly Mandate Elder won't just be injured. Lin Shen stood up. He had recovered from the exhaustion from the Alliance War. He smiled casually. It's time to go out. Whoosh! In the Ice Heart Palace, Lin Shen gathered all the servants. After 7 days, those who were injured were no longer in danger of dying. More than half of them had recovered, and traveling was no longer a problem. When Lin Shen was sitting in the main hall of the Ice Heart Palace, all the servants followed his lead. Now, those who were present were all Lin Shen's trusted aides or servants. The previous palace master of the Divine Flame Palace and guardian venerable Shangguan Zhu were also present. Lin Shen's first sentence was still shocking. Next, I can let you practice cultivation methods, mental cultivation methods, alchemy hand seals, sacred artifacts, bloodlines, and so on. In short, I can increase the basic abilities of anything that can increase your strength by 4 or 5 times. Boom! All the servants' brains exploded. Lin Shen's lips curled up wildly. Since he was going to start a full-scale war, then he would play big. He was going to lay his cards on the table. Chapter 1720. What was going on? Lin Shen's words had overturned all the knowledge and common sense of his servants. If Lin Shen had told them that he had a way to increase the power of their techniques, they wouldn't have been too surprised. After all, there were special secret techniques similar to Fei Wushuang's Ambilight Flowing Light that could increase the power of techniques. However, Lin Shen had said everything, including sacred weapons, bloodlines, mental cultivation methods, and everything else that could increase strength. Shangguan Zhu's snowy face was full of astonishment as she said in disbelief, Lin Shen, are you serious? How are you going to do it? I'm afraid you'll have to pay a big price to do this. She was afraid that Lin Shen would do something impulsive and stupid. Now, he was the hope of the entire team. She couldn't let anything happen to Lin Shen. Lin Shen laughed mockingly. Why are you so worried about me? You can fall in love with me, but don't fall in love with me. Shangguan Zhu rolled her eyes at him. Did you get stimulated by something at the Founding Century Alliance and want to pay a big price to increase our cultivation and strength? If that's the case, forget it. You're the leader and core of the team. Lin Chen raised his hand and interrupted her. Don't worry. I do have to pay a big price to make you stronger, but it won't affect my strength and potential, and it won't affect my lifespan. As long as your divine flame palace is of the same mind as me, I can even give you the same effect. Lin Chen's words reminded the servants of the big shots who had followed Lin Chen to attack the holy prison twice. Their mental cultivation methods and techniques had increased their power by several times in a short period of time. Could it be that their lord could also give them this level of ability? Lin Chen smiled. From now on, focus on recuperating. Close your eyes and deduce the mental cultivation methods you need to use and the techniques you're most proficient in, or secret techniques. Everyone can choose 3. After choosing, practice them in your mind one by one. The servants immediately did as they were told. Shangguan Zhu and the previous palace master hesitated for a moment before sitting cross-legged and closing their eyes to circulate the Divine Flame Heart Sutra system. I want to use the attribute transfer function to convert all the targeted cultivation techniques and mental cultivation methods. Beginning to consume 5,200 heavenly Tao points, 8,200 heavenly Tao points, 2,300 heavenly Tao points, 20,000 intermediate strengthening points, activating attribute transfer function. At this moment, all the cultivation techniques, mental cultivation methods, and bloodlines in the minds of the servants began to strengthen. Then, Lin Chen snapped his fingers. Smack! All the saint artifacts, weapons, and treasures in the providence plant pouches of the servants began to be strengthened. Lin Chen smiled coquettishly as usual. Genesis. Oh, Genesis, you have your saint talent ranking. So what if the Holy Prison team and the Wu family team work together? I can make everyone in the team possess the power of the system. I have enough attribute points now. Let's see if your alliance is stronger or if my team is stronger. Lin Chen's crazy plan. Systematize all members. What they were playing with was their heartbeat. Now, his attribute points were enough to strengthen the entire team. For people as strong as Jiang Taishu and Xiao Ling, who had special methods, if they were strengthened, their strength would increase by several times. While everyone was receiving the system's baptism and strengthening, Lin Chen stepped out of the Ice Heart Palace. Lin Chen still had important things to do. When he raised his head, what entered his eyes was a jade ice branch hanging on the cliff. The beauty's green dress was as elegant as a lotus, and her features were picturesque. She was as quiet as a blooming snow lotus on a snowy mountain. The beauty turned her head and looked at the young man in a daze. She stroked her hair and smiled. Is it done? Lin Chen shrugged. Have it be so easy. I was so busy that I didn't even have time to look for you. Ning Qingxian giggled and landed beside Lin Chen. She said softly, Ling Shuang has already entered seclusion. The two walked side by side. Lin Chen said, this girl has great potential. I keep feeling that her background is not so simple. Ning Qingxian nodded and said, maybe one day, after this matter is over, we can help her find the whereabouts of her parents. According to the historical records of the sacred boundary, the human race has more than one martial god. She smiled quietly. Are you going to set off again? Lin Chen smiled. Yes, I'm going to ask Fairy Ning out. Ning Qingxian rolled her eyes at him. If you don't think I'm a burden, you can take me with you. Then let's go. Lin Chen reached out and hugged the beauty's slender waist, then disappeared into the void. His clone and the divine dragon needed to stay in the Ice Heart Palace. Jiang Taishu was still undergoing the system strengthening, so he couldn't deduce the enemy's movements. All of his strength had to be left here. Lin Chen flew through the void. This time, his destination was the mystic realm. He wanted to go to the Tsangyu secret realm in the sacred boundary, the ancient god temple. Now that the situation in the sacred boundary had changed greatly, the ancient god, as a former wisp of true God's will, might be able to give him some pointers. In addition, Lin Chen had successfully eliminated the Yin Son of Heaven. This matter had to be told to the old man and solve a knot in his heart. Feeling Lin Chen's warm arms, the fairy's jade cheeks flushed slightly. Soon after, she seemed to have thought of something and sighed faintly. I've often thought about why the human race always has disputes and always has to solve problems through force. There are clearly better ways to solve them. So why can't they just sit down and settle things peacefully? Is there really no peaceful world in this world where everyone loses their cultivation and everyone is ordinary? Lin Chen suddenly said, a world where everyone loses their cultivation and everyone is ordinary. This world does exist. Ning Qingxian looked at him in surprise. Lin Chen continued, my hometown is like this. The lifespan of the human race is only 100 years. All living things are equal. Ning Qingxian looked at the youth's calm and somewhat self-mocking appearance. He couldn't help but laugh. But Qingxian, you're wrong. There is no world in this world that doesn't have disputes. No matter how advanced the ideology is, no matter how equal everyone is, there will never be a peaceful world in this world. I know you're naturally indifferent and elegant, but this answer will never exist. Lin Shan turned his head to look at Ning Qingxian, each word knocking on her heart. It's not that the human race only fights because they have cultivation. Even if they don't have power and hide in a corner where their true appearance can't be seen, as long as they can make a sound, as long as they can express their desires, the disputes between humans will never end. No matter if it's the exchange of swords with cultivation or the exchange of malicious words with the restriction of magic. The essence of both is the same. The evil of human nature will always exist. If you want it to disappear, you have to make the human race disappear. Ning Qingxian was stunned, and her heart couldn't calm down for a long time. After the beginning of the era of creation's destruction, the people were plunged into misery and suffering. Many regions turned into purgatory on earth. Witnessing this phenomenon, Ning Qingxian was endlessly worried. She had always been searching for another answer in this world. If there really was such a world and answer in this world, could it save the current sacred boundary? But Lin Chen personally shattered her naive expectations. Chapter 17:21. After a long time, Ning Qingxian grabbed Lin Chen's robes tightly and buried her head in Lin Chen's arms. Is there really no such possibility? Lin Chen said helplessly, it's infinitely close to zero. Ning Qingxian said, haven't you always been able to create miracles? Even you can't do it? Lin Chen smiled bitterly. You think too highly of me. I'm not some great person. Ning Qingxian said, then how are you going to save the sacred boundary? Lin Chen stroked the beautiful woman's hair and said helplessly, I'm not going to save the world. It's just that the Genesis era is in my way, so I have to get rid of it. That's all. Whoosh! A green light flashed by. Within the endless void, Lin Chen arrived at a secret ground that was shrouded in cold qi. It was the Tsanyue's secret realm that Lin Chen had entered before. In the past, Lin Chen didn't have the strength to forcefully break it open. Now, he could tear apart more than half of the secret realm with a flick of his finger. With a wave of his hand, Lin Chen and Ning Qingxian entered the secret realm together, inside a simple and desolate ancient temple. A beautiful fairy-like person in white clothes gently stroked the guqin and played a song. Jines is too beautiful. Suddenly, the person's eyes turned cold. She swept the guqin strings with a flick of her finger, and a wind blade slashed out and tore the void apart. Who dares to trespass into the ancient shrine? Whoosh! The wind blade whizzed past, and two figures appeared in the void. A young man's laughter echoed. This breeze is really not bad. It's even straightened my messy hair. The person in white's beautiful eyes trembled. Her attack didn't even move the other party's clothes. The intruder was no small matter. Qing Lian, back down. We're on the same side. The old man in sackcloth appeared. He had white hair and a youthful face. He looked into the distance and laughed while stroking his beard. Little brat, it's only been a few years, and your body refinement has already reached the half-step king realm. Your spirit has transformed into a primordial spirit. Your saint power fluctuations make even this old man's heart palpitate. You have more than 7,000 high-grade odd crystals. Lin Chen respectfully cupped his fists together. Senior ancient god, I didn't disappoint you. The disciple who killed his master has already died at my hands. Ning Qingxian followed his lead and bowed slightly. Lin Chen handed the scrolls he had obtained from defeating Son of Heaven Yin to the ancient god. When the ancient god's will came into his hand, it trembled. When he heard the news about Son of Heaven Yin, he fell into a long silence before slowly closing his eyes. In the end, countless emotions turned into a sigh that reverberated in the hall. Immediately after, the ancient god laughed. Little brat, come in and have some tea. Let's talk about the current situation of the human race in the sacred boundary. Lin Chen and Ning Qingxian entered the hall and briefly explained the current situation of the human race in the sacred boundary. Good fellow, you actually killed your way to the dragon world. You even dared to attack the sacred prison formed by those fellows. Ha ha. What? You even slept with the Demonkin Empress? Brat, not bad. You have a peerless killing weapon. I couldn't tell. Ha 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 ha. How delightful. This old man really wants to see such a delightful scene with my own eyes. The Founding Era Alliance, huh? The 9 types of divine bird bloodlines are indeed troublesome, but with your potential, it's only a matter of time before you surpass him. The ancient god hadn't laughed so heartily in a long time. After hearing about Lin Chen's experience, he even wanted to keep him here to talk for 10 days and 10 nights. Lin Chen said seriously, Senior ancient god, with my current strength, can I revive you or extend the will of your primordial spirit? The ancient god raised his hand to interrupt him and smiled faintly. Little brat, I know what you want to say. Before I died, I indeed fell to the saint realm, but if you want to revive me or take me away with your current strength, you still can't do it. At the very least, you have to become a god. Lin Chen frowned. Becoming a god was still too far away for him. Then Lin Chen said, Senior ancient god, do you know these people? Lin Chen handed over a dozen portraits drawn with the power of his primordial spirit. They were vivid and lifelike, as if they were real people. Moreover, Lin Chen described the characteristics of these 17 people. The ancient god was very experienced, so he definitely knew more than him. Perhaps he could get some information about these people from him. Lin Chen had to treat these 17 people seriously. The ancient god was surprised. It's actually these guys. He looked like he was recalling something. Back then, after the War of the 9 Races, there were people who wanted to be fishermen and obtained the opportunity of becoming a god. They were captured alive by the gods of the sacred boundary and interrogated for secrets. I thought they had died long ago. When the ancient god introduced the origins of these people to Lin Chen, his expression was very interesting. Top assassins, array masters, fortune tellers, primordial spirits, spiritual bodies, proficient in forbidden techniques, archery saints, descendants of the sword and saber deities, Lin Chen muttered to himself. There was a kind of mysterious destiny in the unseen world. Weren't they exactly the same as his team? Lin Chen thought to himself. It seems that there will be a battle between my people and them. Then Lin Chen said, By the way, Senior, why does the 9 continents have your divine weapon, Firmament Tower, and the origin of the eternal sacred fire? Even someone as strong as Lin Chen did not completely understand the origin of the eternal sacred fire. When he wanted to help Bai Ruoyan with the bloodline of the divine dragon of creation, the eternal sacred fire would automatically protect its master. If they fought with real weapons, Lin Chen might not be able to defeat the eternal sacred fire with his current cultivation. The ancient god's eyes were filled with a hint of hope and recollection. After a long time, he said slowly, Forget it. With your current strength and potential, you will know sooner or later. There's no harm in telling you now. When the universe first opened, a wisp of divine fire accompanied the world and bathed all living beings in the divine realm. After the baptism of the divine fire, the gods of the human race were born. Then, one day, an extremely powerful demon god king broke into the universe below the divine realm. Lin Chen's heart trembled. Demon god king? He had only heard of demon emperors, not demon god kings. Demon god kings are far above demon emperors. According to this old man's fragmented memories, they seem to have come from an even more distant universe and were involved in a great battle that shook the divine realm. That great battle involved the secrets of an even higher universe. The only thing that has been passed down is probably the dragon race. Back then, a dying ancestral dragon also descended to the divine river galaxy. As for what happened after that, this old man has already lost my memories. But one thing is certain. The human race of the divine realm sent 9 envoys with a wisp of the eternal sacred fire to suppress that demon god king. Even if it was only a wisp of the eternal sacred fire, its power far exceeded that of an ordinary sacred fire. Back then, this old man came down from the divine realm and killed one of the 9 envoys of the demon god king. Recalling this, the ancient god showed lingering fear for the first time. He did not show any fear even when facing the battle of annihilation before his death. Only that battle left a deep impression on him. Lin Shun was shocked. The ancient god came from the divine realm. Chapter 1722. 9 Emissaries? Elder Ancient God is one of the 9 emissaries from the realm of the gods. The realm of the gods was too illusory for Lin Shun. He had never imagined what the realm of the gods would be like. The ancient god continued. At that time, the demon god king was seriously injured and wanted to swallow all the galaxies around the divine river galaxy to recover, but was stopped by the 9 emissaries from the realm of the gods. The battle of the gods took place at the edge of the divine river galaxy, where the mortal world was scattered. In that battle, countless lives were destroyed. Out of the 9 emissaries, 6 were sacrificed. In the end, when the demon god king was killed, he used the eternal sacred fire to imprison its will forever. At the same time, he used the sky tower to suppress its final sliver of will. Then he fused countless celestial bodies with the sky tower until the sacred fire burned away the demon god king's will. The ancient god sighed at this point. As long as the demon god king had a trace of will, it could make a comeback. The eternal sacred fire has a natural restraining effect on demons, so the sacred fire had to stay here forever until it burned into nothingness. The demon god king's demonic body was indestructible and superior to ordinary divine power. Although it died, it did not completely disappear and turned into fragments after it was shattered. At this point, it triggered a great war between demons in the mortal world. The demons who obtained the fragments of the demon god king's demonic body became the heavenly demon venerables. Most of the demon emperors in the demon world obtained the fragments of the demon god king's demonic body and became demon emperors. After the conversation, Lin Shen's heart was in turmoil. The eternal sacred flame actually had such a long history. The ancient god seemed to have thought of something and pointed at Lin Shen's forehead with a smile. As for the Sky Tower in the Juzhou continent, it is an item from the realm of the gods. It needs the divine seal of the 9 emissaries to be fully activated. I can only make you its ally, but I cannot control it completely. A fire seal appeared between Lin Shen's eyebrows. Then it gradually disappeared and hid in his body. Lin Shen cupped his hands. "Thank you for your blessing, Elder." The ancient god smiled and said, "If you encounter danger in the mortal world, activate this seal and the firmament tower will help you. However, if you are in the holy world, the firmament tower will not be able to help you unless you can completely control it. Moreover, didn't you say that your little girlfriend has an eternal sacred flame? If you want to revive my soul, perhaps you can try using the eternal sacred flame." Lin Shun and the ancient god talked about many things. Ning Qingxian listened quietly from the side, as if she could see the magnificent desolate era, the era when all the sages of the human race emerged. Lin Shen also truly understood that before the saints' world was founded, there were countless astonishing geniuses who had appeared in the human race. Well, it seems that before the sacred boundary was created, there was no one more handsome than me. That's good. A certain Lin stood up with a serious expression and smiled casually. "Senior ancient god, if there's anything you need, feel free to call me using your primordial spirit imprint. The ancient god smiled lightly. Of course, I'm looking forward to the time when you become a god. I can still wait. Lin Chen teased. There's no need to wait. Senior can eat hot pot and sing while listening to a fairy play the zither. I might succeed. The two looked at each other and laughed. This kid doesn't even blush when bragging. I like it. Finally, Lin Chen asked, by the way, Senior Ancient God, how should I deal with this cultivation method of odd crystals? Lin Chen spread out the 7 ancient books and handed them to the old man. The ancient god was startled and released his spiritual consciousness to scan. He had even deduced the cultivation method of high-grade odd crystals when the Een Son of Heaven was alive. The old man's eyes were still sharp when it came to this disciple's talent. It was a pity that he had embarked on the path of killing his master. Otherwise, this disciple and master would definitely become an eternal legend on the saint talent list. The ancient god shook his head and laughed. Do as you wish. I'm very confident in you. But there's one thing. He specially took out 2 ancient books and said with a smile, I want you to teach this cultivation method of middle-grade and low-grade odd crystals to everyone in the sacred boundary for free in the future. Lin Chen was slightly surprised. The ancient god laughed, and his laughter was heroic and clear. Ordinary geniuses have limited access to the higher levels. Since that's the case, I'm willing to set an example and help the mortals in the world. I hope that all the sincere geniuses in the sacred boundary can become dragons. Lin Chen smiled. Senior is righteous. This kid admires you. Okay, I will choose a suitable time and pass it on to more mortals in the sacred boundary in a more suitable way. If I don't do it responsibly, it will cause a huge uproar and prevent evil sects from knowing the method of creating odd crystals, which will endanger more people. The ancient god smiled. I'm at ease with you doing things. After leaving the ancient god shrine, Ning Qingxian asked curiously in the void, what's next? Lin Chen shrugged. Next? It's very simple, just do it. Give me some benefits. 2 days later, in the Ice Heart Palace, all the servants looked at themselves in shock as if they had discovered a new continent, then looked at Lin Chen. My burning heaven Luoyang heart sutra's power has increased by more than 6 times. My bloodline has broken through. My bloodline is actually close to the bloodline of a descendant of God. And my 7th grade sacred sword, Demon Moon Soul, I tested it just now, and it's not inferior to an 8th grade one. My signature unique skill has broken through to a whole new level again. Even the previous doubts have been cleared up. All the servants almost knelt down in front of Lin Chen. Master, you're forever a god. In these 3 days, their cultivation methods had broken through. Their bloodline soared, their combat skills were enlightened, and their various methods were at least several times more powerful. If they were in the same level, they could beat opponents of the same level in minutes. It was as easy as an adult beating a child. This upgrade was a qualitative change from the inside out. They really couldn't think of anyone else who could do it other than a true god who surpassed mortals. If this wasn't a miracle of God, then what was? The Divine Flame Palace's Grand Elder stared at Lin Chen. Her bottleneck hadn't increased since the last time she went into seclusion, but this time it actually loosened a little. It was because the Divine Flame Heart Sutra's power had skyrocketed. Even someone as domineering as Shangguanju was now like a young girl who had been developed. Her snow-white dimples were filled with shock as she stared at Lin Chen. It was too terrifying. Her cultivation method and her signature technique had actually tripled in power. What kind of ultimate foundation was this? Lin Chen pretended to be shocked, clutching his chest, and said in horror, What does your Divine Flame Palace want to do? Let me say this first. My spear already has an owner. Shangguanju glared at him fiercely, looking very flirtatious, and couldn't help but ask, What did you do? Don't ask. Lin Chen interrupted her with a faint smile. What did I do? I'll teach you at night when I'm free. Your Divine Flame Palace only needs to know to take good care of Royan for me and follow me with peace of mind. In the future, the entire Divine Flame Palace will have similar benefits. The three people from Divine Flame Palace were shocked. The previous palace master was shocked, but also gratified. The Grand Elder's fighting spirit was reignited. She was very clear what it meant for Lin Shun to be able to transform their cultivation method. This level far exceeded the benefits that Wu Pianju brought to them. They were definitely going to follow Lin Shun. After seeing the change in the Grand Elder's expression, Lin Shun laughed. Everyone, let's not waste any more time. Let's go. Let's fly to Sword Domain. Zi Qianshou opened the array while Xiao Ling cast the space passage. During the journey, Lin Shun continued to refine a large number of new high-grade odd crystals, and his elemental attribute value skyrocketed. 4 days later, Sword Domain, Ancient Sword City. The simple and awe-inspiring city released a sharp sword intent that soared into the sky. Sword City was filled with sword tombs, sword monuments, and sword forests. It was filled with awe-inspiring supreme sword intent that stirred up the wind and clouds. Boom, boom, boom. A sword monument shattered, and a group of saints were sent flying by a sword. Their saint blood splattered across the sky. The leading green-robed man's handsome face was cold and solemn as he stared at the 20 people in the void. Among the 20 people, there were actually 3 Saint Kings, and one of them was the famous Sword King, the King of the Sword Dao, the ruler of the world. Entering the Sword Dao to become a Saint King, wielding sword intent to break through life and death. This was the true King of Kings. And the injured green-robed man was Jian Qingqing's father, Jian Cheng. At this moment, Primeval Sword City was encountering an unprecedented calamity. Chapter 1723. Jian Cheng roared unwillingly. Have you all become the dogs of the Genesis era? Isn't it enough to dominate the sword domain? Do you want to cut off all paths of retreat in this world? The 20 people in the air sneered, their eyes full of mockery and disdain. The leading purple-clothed Sword King raised his head and laughed. Jian Cheng, you are too naive. Winner takes all. I only ask you, will you hand over Lin Shen's men? I was just warning you, the next sword will not be so simple. The white-clothed Saint King sneered. A wise man submits to circumstances. Jian Cheng, your decision will affect the lives of the entire ancient sword city. Don't seek your own destruction because of a little friendship. Lin Shen's servants had moved to this place, and some of them had returned to the sword domain. Some of them had been divined by some of the sword domain's divination masters. And it just so happened that the strongest rank 9 sect in the sword domain, the Eternal Sword Sect, had a good relationship with the Genesis era. They had sent out a small number of elites to capture them. If they didn't hand them over, they would die. Very simple. Behind the Eternal Sword Sect was the sky-bearing Sword King, Zhao Lingtian. This person was the strongest swordsman in the 36 domains of the sacred boundary other than the Sword God. He was also the only one who had reached sword intent connecting to God. In this era, without the Sword God, the sky-bearing Sword King was the strongest swordsman. Of course, excluding Jin Taichu. Why make things difficult for the people of Sword City? The dogs of the Genesis Alliance are always so cruel and violent. I don't care if I don't want my life. I will fight it out with you. At this time, the Pill Region's Elder Council, Yi Family, Realm Pagoda, Purple Cloud King Valley, and some of the servants and hidden experts had all appeared from the secret passage of Sword City. They were all ready to die, and they were all ready to fight to the death. There were a few servants at the peak of level 18-9 transformation stage who were ready to fight to the death, and they stood in front of the opposing Saint King. Purple-clothed Sword King raised his brows. You have finally appeared. Take you down. Consider my gift to the Genesis era. Zhang, with a dragon roar, he unsheathed his sword, and purple clouds tore the sky apart. With a sweep of his sword, the soft cloud light shattered everything. It was as if this sword could turn the world into ashes in an instant. The only people who could survive this sword strike would only be important people. Everyone was ready to face death head-on. Just as they were about to charge forward, The space trembled violently, and the cloud of light shattered into fragments of light that filled the sky. It was like the stars in the sky, beautiful and magnificent. All the Sword Dao experts were stunned. Sword King Tai's previous attack was enough to kill most creatures below half-step Saint Kings. Even a Saint King couldn't take it so easily. Who was it? Boom! Whoosh! At this moment, the clouds in the distance split apart. Two vast palaces appeared from outside the immemorial Sword City, as if they were teleporting through the void. Bang! 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 The young man stepped onto the top of the palace, and the two great palaces flashed and turned under his feet at an extremely fast speed. The experts of the Eternal Sword Sect were dumbfounded. He actually drifted over with two palaces? How could he be so unconventional? Boom! When the Ice Heart Palace and Godflame Palace arrived outside the immemorial Sword City, a silver-robed man leaped into the sky and looked down at the experts of the Sword's Gate with a mocking smile. You are from the Genesis era? Very good. You are surrounded by me alone. The experts of the Sword's Gate. Surrounded by one person? Little brother, you are really unconventional. Boom! Clang! Clang! Zheng! The saber light danced wildly, and the sword soared into the sky. The experts of the Sword's Gate were stunned. Damn! Where did this brat come from? Fighting as soon as they met? Tai Gold King's sword. The purple-robed Sword King slashed out a golden path, and the golden light shook the sky. Sword of Innocence. Taishu Dragon Sword. With hundreds of sword strikes, the 20 experts of the Eternal Sword Sect all used their ultimate techniques to block Lin Shen's attack. Pung! Pung! Lin Shen's Saint Dragon used the Taishi Divine Light to cover everyone, and they quickly retreated. Master! The servants shouted in surprise, and they were all overjoyed. They felt that they had reached a whole new level. Their master, who they had not seen for half a year, had grown to an unimaginable level. The red-haired beauty beside Jian Cheng gazed at the man in her heart and was overjoyed. She felt happy from the bottom of her heart for his rapid increase in strength. In the team, Yi Qing Wu waved her fists and shouted excitedly, Lin Shen, why are you only here now? Quickly beat them up. Master? Lin Shen, Tai Sword King, who barely managed to block Lin Shen's first attack, was stunned, and his face was filled with shock. You are Lin Shen. Lin Shen held the demon's slaughtering spear in his hand, stepped on the cloud, and laughed loudly. Cut the crap. Take my spear. If you dare to touch my people, you will have to prepare my big black spear. The spear danced, and the dark lightning in the sky danced like electric snakes, and the destructive lightning bolts shot down like electric dragons. Boom! Pung! 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 The electric dragon spear light split into shadows and smashed down violently. The electric dragons pierced through the defenses of many Swords Gate experts, and their life-saving trump cards were used in the first exchange. Hiss! The people of Purple Cloud King Valley, Pill Domain, and Yi family gasped. What kind of combat power was this? Crushing a half-step king, a 9-revolution saint, and 3 Saint Kings in one exchange, and still having the upper hand. How monstrous had Lin Chen become in this half a year? Linga! Lin Chen shouted coldly, and Xiao Ling transmitted her voice to him. Master, the barrier has been completed. Please fight to your heart's content. After saying that, a huge amount of spatial holy light flashed like silver light, and everyone under the protection of the Taishi Divine Light flashed 100,000 miles away in an instant. Pung! 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 When another series of explosions occurred, Tai Sword King and the 2 Saint Kings were once again hit by Lin Shen's clones in close combat. This time, Lin Shen aimed at the gap between their close combat range and instantly closed in with the speed of his movement technique. When he realized that Lin Shen actually had 5 clones, and that all of them had the same power of the Saint King realm, Tai Sword King immediately realized the seriousness of the problem. Retreat. Just as he was about to tear space and sneak away, he realized that there was an invisible barrier that had completely cut off the space of the outside world. They couldn't find a gap to go to the outside world. They wanted to escape, but Lin Chen didn't give them the chance. It was the clones' close combat attacks that gave Lin Chen the best opportunity. Chrono Transcendence talent. The three clones smashed out with their palms. First, Tai Sword King and the two Saint Kings disappeared in an instant. Then, the other two phantom clones instantly turned into thousands of afterimages and sucked all the Swords Gate experts into the Chrono Transcendence plane. In the Chrono Transcendence, Lin Shun appeared with 7 phantom clones and looked down at all the people of Swords Gate. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to kneel down and seal your acupoints. Explain the matter of Genesis, and I can spare your lives. Otherwise, die. A hint of killing intent flashed across Lin Chen's eyes. Tai Sword King laughed sinisterly. It's just a special spatial saint artifact. What are you so proud of? Lin Chen shook his head and said, I've given you a chance. If you don't cherish it, then regret it in the Yellow Springs. Chapter 1724. Since they didn't surrender, Lin Shun would take the initiative to attack. Zheng. Lin Chen's incarnation slashed out with a heaven-opening sword, and the heaven-opening sword came crashing down. Immediately after, the doppelganger pulled the 9 heaven star thunder and shot out an arrow. In a flash, it split into 5. Chrome. 1 Sword King, 2 Saint Kings, and 17 Swords Gate experts worked together to block Lin Chen's attack. Sword King Tai sneered. Trying to kill us with this level of strength. Before he could finish his words, his pupils suddenly trembled. In the space above him, 5 lantern-like star clusters floated in the air around Lin Chen's incarnation, and the destructive aura made them feel the fear of death. The previous 4 Saint Kings were all defending with all their strength. This time, Lin Shun had already used 2 high-grade orange-level secret arts to distract them, and now was the time to circulate his saint power. Lin Chen laughed. Annihilation, star explosion. Chrome. It was another day of nuclear destruction. Starlight shone in all directions, and smoke engulfed the realm. The energy of the star explosion evaporated into countless mushroom clouds, and the destructive energy spread out like a giant python. Seeing that Sword King Tai and the 2 half-step Saint Kings were still injured, Lin Chen didn't even bother to ask. He raised his hand and pulled out his saber, and he used God's tear. Sword Will of Tai. Sword King Tai spurted out blood, and he slashed out again, and the Sword Will of Void destroyed all the fragments of Lin Chen's saber chi. Oh! Lin Chen was surprised, and he mobilized his incarnation again to cast Annihilation. Star Explosion. Sword King Tai gritted his teeth and slashed out 3 sword wills to protect himself. Chrome. The destructive aura of the Annihilation Star Explosion surged out again. When the smoke dissipated, 3 figures covered in blood were still standing in the energy storm. Lin Chen couldn't help but marvel. So this is the sword will of the Deshang stage, so strong. Lin Chen did not cultivate intent realms. Intent realms were roughly divided into early stage, middle stage, great success, and spirit realm. This Tai Sword King's attainments in sword intent were slightly inferior to Fongling's. On the other hand, if a Sword King used his sword intent, it would be a battle of life and death. Lin Chen's Annihilation Star Explosion, which was powerful enough to kill Saint Kings, actually failed to kill them 2 times in a row. Sword King Tai snarled. Lin Shun, if you kill us, Lord Zhao Lingtian will not let you go. If you let the 3 of us go now, you still have a chance. Lin Chen shook his head and laughed. We're all adults here. Don't be so childish. I've killed so many of your Swords Gate disciples. Do you think you'll let me go if I let you go and have some supper in Swords Gate? Clang. Lin Chen didn't use his spear. Wielding the heaven-freezing sword, he slashed out violently, and the 5 heaven-splitting giant swords fell straight down. Ignoring his injuries, Sword King Tai slashed his sword towards the sky, unleashing his last bit of sword intent to kill the giant sword in the sky. God's tear, heaven-burning arrow. Lin Chen's clone slashed out again. Nine-Cloud Star Fury drew his bow and shot out. In an instant, he split into two shadows and pierced through the defenses of the two kings. Following that, the saber light exploded. With endless saber chi fragments, they all killed the three of them. They crazily activated Annihilation Explosion and Annihilation Wound, sending them all on their way. The Ultra Space-Time Plane was so powerful. In this place, all of Holy King's escape methods would be cut off. On this day, the entire Eternal Sword sect was shocked. The core Grand Elders, 2 Saint Kings, and a Sword King had all died at the same time. Host has received 12,400 top Heavens Path points, 9 billion Saint-level health points, 40,000 fire energy, 20,000 Saint-level rune energy, 20,000 Saint-level cultivation technique essence, 9 billion set essence, 42 million intermediate strengthening points, 1 billion Saint-level spirit. With the death of 3 Saint Kings, Lin Chen's attributes soared crazily. However, Lin Chen was no longer the same as before. The quantity and quality of the attributes dropped was directly proportional to the difficulty of the creatures killed by the host. Lin Chen frowned. Guys who have comprehended sword intent are really difficult to deal with. This was still sword intent at the great accomplishment stage. If it was sword intent connecting to God, Lin Chen's main body and 7 clones might not be a match for it. Lin Chen's eyes narrowed as he pondered. In the Founding Era Alliance, Jin Taichu and Jiang Poi are known as the strongest Saint Kings below the True God realm. They have reached the realm of Saber Intent per Icelandic and Sword Intent per Icelandic respectively. Lin Chen could predict that these two people were the most troublesome types of enemies. I also need experts of the same level to hold these two guys back. If I don't solve the problem of these two guys, I have no chance of winning against the Genesis Alliance. Thinking of this, Lin Chen suddenly smiled. Looks like I can only leave it to Fong Ling and Lang Fanyan. Host has received 2 exclusive orange-grade talent treasure chests, 1 special divine material fragment. At this time, the system screen popped up. Lin Chen was shocked. He had more than 10 orange-grade talent treasure chests. If he fused them now, there was a high probability of obtaining a top-tier orange-grade talent, or at least a high-tier orange-grade talent. After killing another 3 Saint Kings, Lin Chen's harvest could be said to be extremely abundant. Every human Saint King had gone through countless eras of accumulation, and their wealth was not to be underestimated. One of them was comparable to an entire grade, 8 sect, or even more. Looking at the large number of treasures scattered all over the super space-time realm, these were the treasures and accumulation of the Swords Gate Expert's Providence plant pouches. After being killed by Lin Chen, they fell here together with the attribute light balls. Lin Chen opened the Providence plant pouch and took them all. He sighed helplessly. Fighting is the fastest way to accumulate wealth. This is indeed true. Unfortunately, if there were no such things, I'd rather not fight at all. I'd rather find a beautiful place to chat with beauties, practice my spear, and do some sports. Isn't it better to fight all day long? Damn it, humans have so many things to do. Lin Chen's incarnation quickly absorbed a large number of Golden Saint Origin coins to recover his saint power. Every time he cast the Star Explosion, it would consume more than 100,000 Saint Origin coins. If it weren't for the battle, Lin Chen would try his best to recover his saint power with medicinal pellets or Golden Saint Origin coins. After all, Lin Chen's Saint Origin coins were not enough for him to squander freely. In the ancient Sword City, Lin Chen returned. Master, the servants that escorted the Dan region's Elder Council immediately clasped their fists and greeted respectfully. Yi Qingwu flew over like a butterfly and circled around Lin Chen like a curious baby. She looked up and down and smiled slyly. Not bad, Brother Chen. I haven't seen you for half a year, and you've become so strong. You've defeated all those people just now. You're really powerful. Lin Chen smiled mockingly. Who are you looking down on? I've already killed them. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Yi Qingwu and Yi Li Shui's eyes lit up. Kill them? That was 2 Saint Kings and a Sword King. The people from Purple Cloud King Valley and Boundary Tower praised in their hearts, but their faces were still filled with shock and amazement. In just half a year, Lin Chun had improved by leaps and bounds to such a heaven-defying extent. They more or less knew that when he challenged Divine Flame Palace and killed 4 Saint Kings and Een Son of Heaven, Lin Chun had paid a huge price. But now, Lin Chun had killed 3 Divine Kings and more than a dozen Rank 8 and Rank 9 sages. The current Lin Chun was no longer the same as before. Everyone present deeply felt that they were right to bet. That's right. Now was the time to place their bets. They were on good terms with Lin Chun. If Lin Chun won against Genesis, they would benefit immensely. Chapter 1725. At this moment, Xiao Ling was overjoyed. She clapped her hands and said, "Brother Fong Ling and the others are rushing back." Xiao Ling noticed that she'd improved, and she was filled with joy. Her beautiful eyes that were brimming with limpid autumn water stared at Lin Chun with tender feelings that were filled with worship and admiration. Even though she had a lot of experience, she couldn't suppress her excitement. If she didn't experience it herself, she wouldn't believe that her spatial divine art had improved by more than a few times. If it was before, she would have to wait at least 12 hours before she could sense that Fong Ling and Lang Fanyan were near the edge of the sword domain. Now, the two had just reached the edge of the sacred boundary, and she had already sensed it with her spatial divine art. The Lord's methods were heaven-defying. Hearing Fong Ling's name, Jian Cheng was enlightened. When we were in danger just now, we sent a message to Sir Fong Ling and the others. Jian Wuji, who hadn't seen for a long time, patted Lin Chen's shoulder and sighed. "Kid, after so many years, you've become so strong." Lin Chun said humbly, "Senior Jian Wuji, I can't take compliments. Please praise me more when you have time." Everyone laughed. Then, Lin Chun smiled and waved his hand. He looked around and said with a smile, "Since they're back, everyone, let's take root in the sword domain temporarily." At this moment, Jiang Taishu suddenly said, "My lord." Everyone looked at him. His expression was especially serious. He said in a deep voice, "Although it's not appropriate for me to say this, Sir Fong Ling." Lin Chun raised his hand and interrupted him. Lin Chun smiled. "I know what you want to say. You came out of the holy prison and followed me with your lives. I will also respond to your expectations." Lin Chun looked into the distance. He laughed loudly, overflowing with arrogance. "I want the sword domain and saber domain's destiny to be completely liberated. From now on, as long as one's attainment is enough, all living beings in the sacred boundary and all sword cultivators with sincerity will be able to enter the divine realm of saber intent and divine realm of sword intent. Sword domain, eternal sword sect. Above the clouds, a cloud gate stood between heaven and earth. The white-robed man sat cross-legged in the clouds with a sheathless black sword beside him. The sword intent between his brows became even more exquisite and condensed. His sword intent was indestructible and had dominated the ages. There was a kind of supreme realm where one could do as one wished. This person was the current pinnacle of swordsmanship in the sacred boundary, the sky-piercing Sword King, Zhao Lingtian. Sword intent connecting to divinity was the highest realm of the Sword Tao, the ultimate realm to express one's strength. Those with divine sword intent could form 10,000 swords with a single thought and see through all things in the world. With a single thought, the sword intent would be released instantly, and it would break through anything that stood in its way. For example, if the user wanted to split an island apart, the sword intent would instantly split the island apart when this thought appeared in his mind. The sword intent followed the heart, arriving with a single thought. Nothing could stop it. Sword will and saber will were attached to the user's primordial spirit. Every time they were used, they would consume primordial spirit energy and saint energy. However, they could increase the power of any attack. Sword intent connecting to spirit and saber intent entering spirit were known as the strongest offensive techniques in the world. If they were attached to any swordsmanship or saber technique, they would be the most terrifying divine weapon. At this moment, only those who had reached the Saint King realm could clearly see the phenomenon above the sky-piercing Sword King's head. It was as if a divine dragon had descended to the world, and the dragon was spitting out a pearl. The dragon's tail was connected, and a vast dragon was entrenched in the sky of the sword domain. What was even more amazing was that there was a huge vortex spinning in the vast starry sky above the dragon. Inside the vortex above the dragon's head was a huge, ancient door. Around the huge door, the bones of heroes were piled up like mountains. The tombstones of heroes were lined with feathers. There were too many heroic and legendary auras buried here, condensing and not dispersing. This was a scene that only Saint Kings could see. Saint Kings had opened 100 Saint Points, and the last one was located in the sacred eye point between their eyebrows. Only those with the sacred eye could see this scene. This scene was called the Gate of Providence. Other than powerful diviners, only the Saint King's sacred eye could see the Gate of Providence. Providence was the existence that balanced all things in the world. Ordinary people would never be able to understand or see the true appearance of providence in their entire lives. Providence was like water, and living beings were like fish. A fish without water could only move forward a few centimeters, no matter how hard it slapped its tail. It was impossible for a fish to leap over the dragon gate and become a dragon, and the sword domain's providence was the key to the peri-celestial realm for sword saints in the sacred boundary. If the providence condensed and closed, sword saints in the sacred boundary would not be able to peek into the peri-celestial realm. Now, the sword domain's providence was sealed here. There was only one overlord here, the sky-piercing Sword King. Those who lost their providence would never be able to step into the sword, Tao, omnipotent realm when the gate of providence never opened. Unless they had reached the sword, Tao, omnipotent realm before the gate of providence closed. Suddenly, the sky-piercing Sword King, Zhao Lingtian, opened his eyes. His sword intent cut through the void and cut through the clouds. He said coldly, Tai is dead, together with the other two. Who dares to attack my sword sect? Boom! The sword intent split the heavens, splitting the sky into two halves. How dare you attack my sword sect? Die! Slash! The sword light was like a dragon, cutting through the sky. The number one Sword King in the sacred boundary had personally made a move. Founding Era Alliance headquarters, Ing Jiufeng stepped into the air and looked at the martial god clan who had just arrived. Ing Jiufeng glanced at them. The true dragon Saint King seemed to have seen through his thoughts. He said calmly, "It's not the time to launch an all-out attack. Although they have recovered from their injuries, their Saint Points are still empty. They still need some time before they reach their peak state." Ing Jiufeng said coldly, "How much longer?" The true dragon Saint King said, "At least 3 months, not including the large number of criminals in the sacred prison. Of course, if you can find me another 9th grade saint-level alchemist, this time can be halved." Ing Jiufeng frowned and flicked his sleeves. "Fine, 3 months it is. Summon all the 9th grade Saint Kings. This time, I want to destroy Lin Chen once and for all. The gathering of 12 9th grade sects and families will be the most earth-shattering battle in the history of the sacred boundary." Ing Jiufeng seemed to have thought of something. He smiled and said, "Also, send out messengers and invite the families and sects behind the 42 saint geniuses to send out their experts to help us take down Lin Chen and the others." As soon as he said that, the 1,000 Fox Saint King smiled. Next, the Saints' world would undergo a complete change. Lin Chen had massacred the Saint Talent Board. The result of this operation would not be so simple. Sword Realm, Ancient Sword City. Bang! Bang! Fong Ling and Lang Fanyan knelt down in shame. Everyone's mouth twitched. Damn it! The Saint King knelt down and admitted his mistake without hesitation. This scene was still shocking no matter how many times they saw it. "My lord, it's our fault. My lord, if you want our lives, there will be no second. Lin Shen face-bombed and raised his hand to stop them. Stop, stop, stop. Stand up, each of you. You've been with me for so long, don't you know my temper? I'm not going to waste my time with you. It's over. Let's move on. The two looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Lin Shen continued. Let me ask you, how's the inheritance going? Fong Ling said, it's going smoothly. The Immortal Dawn sect has been through the primordial age for thousands of years and has countless extraordinary people. Its foundation is even comparable to 4 ninth-grade forces and above. Chapter 1726. Lin Chun was amazed. If it were not for the Great War of the 9 clans, no one would have been able to annihilate a colossus like the Immortal Dawn sect. Lang Fanyan continued. Fong Ling and I were supposed to guard the place because the plane we were in was remote and far away. However, when we received the message, Jiangwan had already come out of isolation, so we rushed back. Initially, we planned to pass the remaining 6 legacies to Ji Wuchen and Zi Qianshou after they were done. However, we didn't expect it to happen so suddenly. If it weren't for my lord, Lin Chin smiled. I understand the gist of it now. However, no matter how strong a legacy is, it still needs time to master it. After you're done, bring me directly to the land of legacy. I'll lend them a hand. Then, Lin Chun said seriously, their opportunity has indeed arrived. As for your opportunity in future, I'll create it for you. Both of them were stunned. As if struck by lightning, their bodies trembled. Could it be that their lord? Lin Chun laughed heartily. You've been waiting for a long time, haven't you? The realm of sword will and the realm of transcendent saber will. Both of them trembled. Even someone as cold as Fong Ling revealed excitement, ecstasy, and anticipation. Yes, how many eras had they been waiting for? It was all for the sake of pursuing the realm of divine connection and transcendent. That realm was an absolute watershed. In fact, the reason why he chose to follow Lin Chun in the holy prison was because he wanted to gamble on him. They gambled that Lin Chun would lead them out of the holy prison. They gambled that Lin Chun could release their fate and create a new era. Lang Fanyan felt as if he was dreaming. Is this day finally coming? Lin Chun smiled. You've accumulated enough. However, you were harmed by a scoundrel back then, and the fate of the saber and sword regions was sealed. As long as your fate is released, you'll be able to ascend to that realm immediately. However, before that, I still need to make a small preparation for you. After all, our next opponent is the Sword King with the Realm of Sword Will. The Realm of Sword Will was not to be underestimated. In short, even if the first Grand Elder of the Divine Flame Palace and Shangwan Ju joined forces, they would still be defeated by the Supreme Sword King with the Divine Sword Will. Moreover, it was a quick defeat without any suspense. Not to mention, Sword King Qing Tian also had the Eternal Sword Sect, one of the strongest powers in the sword domain. Lin Chun said, since the other party has already made their move and is trying to take us down and join forces with Genesis, then there's no need for us to hold back. Gather our forces and fight our way over. You too. Do you still remember what I told you last time? Fong Ling and Lang Fanyan were stunned. Immediately, they sat down with their legs crossed and began channeling their heart's sutras and deducing their strongest sword and blade techniques in their minds. Xiaoling waved her hand when she saw this, and her slender and jade-like fingers lightly moved, causing a spatial barrier to isolate and cover everyone. Host has activated a tribute transfer function, consuming heavenly Tao points. This time around, Lin Chun had strengthened both their mental cultivation techniques and skills to the maximum possible level. This was also one of the reasons why Lin Chun did not upgrade the Annihilation Star explosion immediately. He needed to increase the overall strength of the team by several levels. Systematize all personnel. It was that simple and crude. And these 2 sacred weapons. Lin Chun stared at the fatal heavenly saber and ultimate Ju sacred sword floating in front of him and smiled playfully. Smack! Lin Shun snapped his fingers, beginning to strengthen a specified grade, 9 sacred weapon, consuming 28812 strengthening points. The two sacred weapons began to glow with extreme brilliance and soared all the way, strengthening a grade, 9 sacred weapon. The corners of Lin Chen's mouth rose crazily. Damn it, Genesis, this time I will strengthen 17 cultivation techniques and a grade 9 sacred weapon. I want to see if your team or mine is better. Dragon Realm. 15 primordial dragon clan higher-ups actually gathered together for a private meeting. The current 25 primordial dragon clans form the main force of the Dragon Realm, and each clan's ideology was completely different, so there were often conflicts and clashes. If the dragon clans controlled by the 10 great dragon kings were said to hate humans, then the current 15 primordial dragon clans were said to be rational, and they pursued more possibilities. That day, after bidding farewell to Lin Shun, there was an uproar in the Dragon Realm. The reason was that more than 50 divine dragon descendants had their bloodlines soared and raised by another level. This was unprecedented in the original history. Even the dragon god would not be able to do such a thing. At extinct Dragon Mountain, the Dragon Clan elders and dragon kings gathered at the peak. Today, the situation is no longer comparable to the past. If we miss the tide of the era, we will no longer have the chance to regret it. That's right, we should see more possibilities. Lin Shun is a person who dares to fight, and disdains to associate with evil. Even the wills of the 7 divine dragon ancestors have recognized him, which proves that he is the light of the Dragon Clan. This kid can easily enhance the bloodlines of more than 50 of us in an instant, which proves that he even has the ability to enhance all of our bloodlines. The primordial dragon clan higher-ups were in an uproar. Moreover, Lin Shun is not afraid of anything. He is obviously the type who is amenable to coaxing but not coercion. That's right, competing with Lin Shun is no different from competing with the Machine King. He is overestimating himself. We should try to reason with him. I've already received news that he's caused a huge ruckus in the Saint world. Even someone as powerful as the Saint's prison wants to deal with him. Even more human forces are targeting him. Right now, Lin Shun is surrounded by enemies from all sides. In addition, the gods have left. Now is the best time to enter the human sacred boundary. This is the best time to help Lin Shun and the only chance to befriend him. But you have to think clearly. We have an agreement with the human clans. We cannot cross the boundary. Otherwise, the humans will gang up on us. Then let them gang up on us. It just so happens that we can also share the pressure for Lin Shun. Think about it. After Lin Shun defeats the Founding Century Alliance, who will be the one who has the authority to speak in the sacred boundary? It will be Lin Shun at that time. So what if we don't abide by the agreement? If Lin Shun wins, he will be the rule. The higher-ups and Dragon Kings became more and more excited as they discussed. Their opinions might not be the same, but at least they had the same goal. All of them wanted to befriend Lin Shun. It was better to provide timely assistance than icing on the cake. This is an opportunity. It is worth our gamble. Finally, a great Dragon King personally stepped forward. It was the great Dragon King of the extreme hell water divine dragon. She wore armor and a crown, looking valiant and heroic. The white jade beads on her crown clashed against each other, and her snow-white face revealed the natural demeanor of a king. She slammed the table and said sternly, "I don't care about your opinions on this operation. I am willing to send a Dragon King and 4 revered dragons to assist Lin Shun." Ha ha ha! Extreme Hell Dragon King, you are really generous. You can't be polite to my race. I will also send a Dragon King, 3 revered dragons, and a dragon guard. I will personally bring people to him. I don't believe he won't remember this favor. TSK, you're too young. Not only will I go personally, but I will also bring my race's princess over. What? Are you trying to cause trouble? All right, my myriad fire divine dragon race will also send a few dragon dukes over. Damn you. Who are you looking down on? Do you believe that I will order all the beauties of my race to be sent over as well? The descendants of the divine dragons outside the peak were stunned. The dragon world was in an uproar because of a human. Chapter 17:27. Some descendants of the divine dragons even twitched their mouths and covered their faces in shame. These dragon kings, and dragon elders, who used to be highly respected in the past, were all fighting for Lin Shun. Their faces and necks had all turned red. It was fine if they went to help. Good Lord, at the end of the fight, they wanted to give him beauties and treasures. Those who didn't know would think that they wanted to propose marriage. Suddenly, for some reason, as they fought, some of the dragon elders suddenly realized that there were fewer people. What's going on? Where's the old fiend? Even the old fiend is gone. Are they not going to help? No, they're running away. The stupid dragons are still fighting, but the smart ones have already started to go back and bring the dragons with them to find Lin Shun. Damn, I'm not going to argue with you anymore. I'm going back to bring people. I'll lead you. The 10 dragon kings who were standing outside the peak were furious when they heard the conversation of the desolate air dragons. They almost cursed. The dignified dragon race actually had to wag their tails and beg a human for a favor. This was too F*** shameful for their ancestors. The supporters and the opponents started to fight again. After thousands of years, the dragon world finally started to boil. 15 days later, sacred boundary, 1,000 domains. Hundreds of sects contended for glory, and the 1,000 domains had many different sects with different characteristics. Today, Qian Xue from the Wuji Palace came to visit the Yuehua Baiyang sect, a 9th-rank sect in 1,000 domains. Baiyang sect, Moon Pavilion. The Yuehua sect master was wearing a beautiful palace dress. He smiled and said, "Haha, thank you for informing us today, Xue. My sect will make sufficient preparations. It's our fortune to be able to establish a relationship with the Wuji Palace." Qian Xue bowed slightly and smiled. "Senior, you must be joking. I'm just passing on great-grandfather's orders." Crack. At this moment, a crisp cracking sound was heard. The Yuehua sect master and Qian Xue were shocked. A lazy and devilish voice echoed in the void. "This is the human race? It's so boring. Why isn't there anyone here?" The Yuehua sect master's eyes narrowed. She was the sect leader of a 9th-rank sect, and she was only one step away from becoming a Saint King. Even someone as strong as a veteran Saint King would not be able to sneak into the Baiyang sect without making a sound. Whoosh! With the spear in her hand, Qian Xue's battle-intent sword. She looked valiant and cold as she faced the faintly discernible figure in the air. A young man with a pair of red wings stepped out of the clouds. In a split second, the entire sky was dyed blood red. His murderous intent shot through the sky. Qian Xue and the Yuehua sect master exclaimed in unison, "Demon race." The demon race dared to enter the sacred boundary? How could there be such a daring demon? No. The Yuehua sect master's beautiful eyes trembled as she said in a trembling voice, "This demon has the aura of a demon emperor. Moreover, it was very pure. He's the first direct descendant of the devil emperor's son. Could it be? The son of the demon emperor." The red-winged demon laughed sinisterly. "It's been a long time since I sucked the providence of a human sect. This time, I'm going to suck them dry completely." Ha ha ha. A red eye appeared between his brows. He looked down at the sacred and majestic Yuehua sect beneath his feet, opened his arms, and laughed maniacally. "Weak humans, I'll give you a chance. One move. If your entire sect can take one move from me, I'll let you off. If not, die." The red-winged youth's maniacal laughter was accompanied by billowing demonic aura. It reverberated through the clouds within a radius of a few million miles, shaking heaven and earth and shattering the space. At this moment, countless hidden powerful figures of the Yuehua sect were shocked and came out of seclusion. Qian Xue's heart palpitated, and she revealed a rare look of fear. This demonic aura, it can't be wrong. It's already comparable to the 10 people on the Saint talent roll. The Yuehua sect master shouted coldly. Everyone, listen to my orders. Fight the enemy at all costs. The son of the demon emperor appeared in the 1,000 domains. He had single-handedly challenged a 9th-rank sect. Blood realm, rumble. A beam of holy light shot into the sky and turned into a meteorite-like ray of light. The aura vibrated. At this moment, the entire sacred boundary was shaken. Another sage king had fallen. The enchanting figure was wearing a red dress. 2 red snakes were coiled around her slender waist, spitting out their tongues. She was as beautiful as a concubine. She walked in the air, and a group of figures with overwhelming demonic aura followed behind her. However, she wiped the blood from her lips nonchalantly and chuckled. The blood of a sage king and the marrow of a sage king's bones are really delicious in the demon realm. The gods are not here, but the demon race is here. I'm really looking forward to seeing how delicious the human Lin Chen's blood is. Heavenly demon supremacies continue to search for Lin Chen's whereabouts. Yes, the moment the blood realm sage king fell, the entire world was shaken. The various 9th-rank sects in the 36 regions finally realized the seriousness of the problem. Sword Realm, the highest sky of the ancient Sword City. Jiang Taishu sat cross-legged in the void, staring at the disappearing stars of providence in the sky. He pinched his fingers and made a few calculations. Then, his expression changed slightly. Heavenly demon supremacy has appeared, and not just one. There are at least 10 of them. There are even a few demon race scents that are especially strange. This providence is like a demon emperor covering the sky. I have never heard of or seen anything like this before. I must inform the Lord immediately. Inside the ancient Sword City, Lin Chen met with Yi Lixue, Yi Qingwu, and the people from Purple Cloud King Valley. After hearing Yi Lixue's words, Lin Chen was shocked. The closing of the Sword Realm and Saber Realm's Gates of Providence has something to do with the top 10 on the Talent Saint ranking. Yi Lixue's cold face was solemn. She said seriously, "Yes, if you want to open the Sword Realm's Gate of Providence, you will offend the top 10 on the Talent Saint ranking." Lin Chen thought for a while, and then said jokingly, "Since Annie knows, why did you ask me to kill Chu Tai Xian from the Saber Realm?" Yi Lixue said helplessly, "I didn't ask you to act now. Who knew that you would have to act so soon? I estimate that you will need at least 3,000 years to equal or surpass him." Little Demon Empress Yi Qingwu muttered to herself and clenched her hands. Chu Tai Xian, is this the person who caused Mother's bloodline to be in such despair? Saber Realm, Chu Tai Xian. This person was also an ancient legend in the top 10 on the Talent Saint ranking. In front of Lin Chen, Purple Cloud King Valley, Shangguanju, and the others, Yi Lixue revealed the secret of many years. Yi Lixue was born in the heavenly sanctuary. Yi Lixue's grandmother was the descendant of the Saber Realm's true god's concubine. After that, after the War of the 9 Families, the true god's whereabouts were unknown. The descendants of the Yi family's grandmother suffered greatly and became living sacrifices because of their bloodline. Yi Lixue's grandmother had the bloodline of a god. What was mysterious was that after the Yi family's god's blood interbred with other gods' descendants, there was a certain probability that they would obtain a mysterious bloodline mutation. They would be like tigers that had grown wings on their original god's blood and obtain new abilities. And to a large extent, it would nourish the cultivation of the male god's descendants. So, the Yi family was the true sacrifice. The Yi family was raised like livestock by the Saber Realm's Chu family. They constantly reproduced, and their mission was to give birth to more descendants for the Chu family and other families' God's descendants. The Yi family, who were completely raised as tools for reproduction, was once used as the currency for the Chu family to befriend other God's descendants. The women of the Yi family had one of the most outstanding talents, but they lived worse than pigs and dogs. And the Yi family's male descendants and untalented female infants would be abandoned or killed. Yi Lixue was one of them who was abandoned later, Even someone as strong as Yi Lishue would feel pain and weakness whenever she talked about this memory. So when she entrusted it to Lin Shun, she felt so heavy. This was the path of revenge that belonged to her and the countless descendants of the Yi family. It was the meaning of her life that she had walked step by step until today. After that, Yi Lishue rescued even more useless, abandoned children from the Yi family and established the successor Yi family. Then she met the Purple Cloud King Valley. However, the scars of the Yi family were forever imprinted on Yi Lishue's body. She had always kept the hatred in her heart until Yi Qingwu's arrival gave her new hope. The god's blood in Yi Qingwu's body caused the bloodline to revert to its ancestor. At one point, it even surpassed the Yi family's grandmother. And if Yi Qingwu married a descendant with the god's blood, her cultivation and aptitude would undergo a huge change. Moreover, her descendant would be an extremely strong, holy infant who would have the aptitude to enter the saint talent rankings. Yi Lishue did not know the background of an ordinary god's descendant. It was beyond her control, so she chose the Zhao family, who had the background of a god's descendant. According to her original plan, after Yi Qingwu married into the Zhao family, her child would be Yi Lishue's greatest hope for revenge. It was only when he met Lin Shun that everything changed. After listening to Yi Lishue's experience, Shang Guanju sighed. She sighed, "If the Godly Flame Palace accepted Wu Pianju's plan, I'm afraid they would end up like the second Yi family." Lin Shun smiled playfully. "It seems like I have to settle this in one go. No worries, I'll take on the sword domain first, then the knife domain." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked to the core. Lin Shun was actually going to challenge the most ancient dual domain overlord of the 36 domains. Chapter 1728. Kaboom! At this moment, a sharp sword and saber intent pierced through the clouds. These two intents were far beyond great accomplishment stage, and infinitely close to saber intent and sword intent. Lin Shun raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Looks like they've completed it." Fong Ling and Lang Fanyan were out. Their sacred artifacts, mental cultivation techniques, and techniques had all been strengthened. Their combat power was complete. It was time. Swoosh! At this moment, Jiang Taishu walked into the hall and said respectfully, "My lord, I have something to report." Lin Shun said, "Could it be that a sage king died recently?" Jiang Taishu nodded. "Yes, the death of this sage king is related to demons. Demonic aura is everywhere." "Oh." Lin Shen's interest was piqued. "You mean the Saint King was killed by the devil race?" Lin Shen was not surprised that a sage king died. He used to think that there were very few sage kings because he had not come into contact with them. Now that he stood at the peak of the sacred boundary, and the situation had completely changed compared to before, it was not strange for one or two sage kings to die. But if it was related to the demons, then forget it. The sacred boundary was the territory of the humans. What kind of concept was it for the demons to kill a sage king in the human territory? Jiang Taishu said seriously, "That's right. My lord, it's best to be careful. The death of a sage king this time is no small matter. Not only are there signs of the heavenly demon venerable appearing in the sacred boundary, but I've also deduced that more than 3 types of demonic aura have appeared. The demonic aura is noble. It's the emperor of demons, equivalent to the demon emperor." "Demon emperor?" Lin Shun rubbed his chin and chuckled. "Looks like my reputation has reached such a level. I'm really flattered. At my age, I have to bear the pressure of being handsome that I shouldn't bear. It's so annoying." After saying that, Lin Shen stood up. His gaze was sharp. "Let's not care about the demons for now. If they want to cause trouble, it will involve Genesis. Since they want to pass off the fish eyes as pearls, we will go straight to the root of the problem. Let's go. This time, it's our turn to attack. Taishu will cover our aura. Let's go to the Eternal Sword Sect." Eternal Sword Sect, Main Sword Hall. Today, the 3 Sword Kings of the Eternal Sword Sect had gathered. The Sky High Sword King had personally come out of seclusion. The remaining 2 Saint Kings of Swords Gate were also summoned by Sword King Qingtian. In addition to the 3 Saint Kings that died earlier, there were now 4 Sword Kings and 4 Saint Kings in the Eternal Sword Gate. Such a foundation would be considered top-notch, even among rank 9 sects. Zhao Lingtian sat on the seat of the Hall of Swords. He said coldly, "Taking down the ancient sword city has led to the death of the Elder Council of our Swords Gate. This is a great humiliation to us. I will personally lead a team and send out all of my men to kill this brat." As soon as he said this, the expressions of the kings changed slightly. An old sword king with white hair and a youthful face said worriedly, "My lord, the Saint Talent Board has requested for you to stay in Swords Gate for a long time." Zhao Lingtian glared at him coldly. "Are you asking me to do something? Others have already fought their way into the sword domain, killing this king's men. Where is my face?" Ha ha ha. Suddenly, the young man's laughter reverberated in the sky, awe-inspiring and domineering. "Your face? From the moment you decided to join hands with the Genesis Alliance, you have already been fed to the dogs. No, I should say that when you monopolize the fortune of the sword domain and block the advancement of all the swordsmen in the world, you have no face to speak of." A group of figures tore through the void and appeared. It was Lin Shun and the others. This time, Lin Shun brought along the Celestial Flame Palace's Grand Supreme Elder, Fong Ling, Lang Fanyun, Lin Ping, and 6 of his incarnations. It was not a lot of people, but they were all the strongest forces that Lin Chun could mobilize now. The last incarnation was left behind to guard the rear. The sword will connecting God was not to be underestimated. This time, they were not going to defeat him, but to kill him. To kill the strongest sword king of the sword domain. They had to use their trump card right from the start. Oh, Zhao Lingtian led the men and left Swords Gate. He hovered in the air and looked at Lin Shun from afar. He sneered and said, "You are Lin Shun? And Fong Ling, Lang Fanyun. I didn't expect you guys to be able to escape from the Saint prison." Fong Ling said calmly, "Don't act like you are in control of everything. Have you forgotten how you follow behind me and ask for my guidance? If it weren't for you and that old monster who framed me and sent me to prison, you would still be a little brother in front of me." Fong Ling clenched the sword hilt on his back and said calmly, "That old monster is dead. The next one is not far away." Zhao Lingtian laughed and said, "A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. Now that you are a Saint King, you want to challenge me? Do you think you can settle the score with me?" Fong Ling Jian's will surged, and he said coldly, "No, I am only following my master to kill the enemy." Zhao Lingtian glanced around and said in surprise, "Pain Disaster and Celestial Flame Palace's Xian Yu? Even you want to fight with me?" Celestial Flame Palace's Elder Xian Yu said calmly, "I am not here to fight with you. I am here to kill you." Ha ha. Qingtian Sword King was as if he heard the funniest joke in the world. Kill him? Back then, he was one of the top 10 on the Saint Talent ranking and had already become a Saint King. He was one of the top Saint Kings and had mastered the highest level of swordsmanship. Unexpectedly, Lin Shin pushed Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun away. "Damn it. Why are you still talking to him? Let's hit him in the face first." Lin Shin's palm was filled with 9-colored starlight. He raised his hand and threw the 9 tribulation star at Zhao Lingtian. Whoosh! A beam of 9-colored aurora split into 5 streaks of meteors and fell down. 9 tribulation star at the start. This was Lin Shin's most powerful killing move. Zhao Lingtian narrowed his eyes, and a peerless sword will appeared between his eyebrows. He held the sword and stabbed, turning and slashing. Kaboom! Bam! 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 A strange scene appeared. Lin Shin's 9 tribulation stars, which had split into 2, were all chopped into pieces and fell into the endless cracks in the vacuum. "Be careful, my lord!" Fong Ling shouted. Splat! The sword will came at lightning speed. Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun used their sword will to protect everyone. Lin Shun and the 3 doppelgangers were affected by the sword will. Whoosh! As the sword will passed, Saint blood spilled. All of Lin Chen's doppelgangers were injured even though they had activated the golden jade garment. Lin Chen's real body was not injured, but the star-chasing heavenly morning robe on his shoulder had a sword mark. Lin Chen's eyes narrowed. This guy, what a freakish strength. Just in terms of cultivation, he had already surpassed Grand Elder Xianyu of the Godflame Palace. With the help of sword intent connecting to God, he actually directly destroyed his 9 tribulation star. He did not destroy it, but cut it into nothingness. Not only that, but even his doppelgangers were injured. A sinister smile appeared on Zhao Lingtian's cold face. To be able to force me to use my sword will at the beginning, Lin Shun, your strength is indeed extraordinary. Today, you came to me willingly, which is exactly what I wanted. Today, I will let you know what it means to be the strongest Sword King. Watch how I destroy your defensive saint weapon. ZHNNG. The sound of the sword turned into a dragon's roar. Zhao Lingtian's sword was like a ferocious dragon as it struck. Be careful, my lord. Let us stop him. Lang Fanyun and Fong Ling unsheathed their sabers and swords and slashed forward like a pair of scissors. The sabers and swords clashed together. Kaboom! The two of them unleashed their half-step imminent deity and peri-celestial sword will and saber will, clashing head-on with Zhao Lingtian. The terrifying aura split the sky millions of miles in the east of Sword Realm. Zhao Lingtian shouted coldly, "Sword's Gate, take down Lin Shun, dead or alive." Chapter 17:29. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. The 2 Saint Kings and 2 Sword Kings of Swords gates suddenly appeared and charged towards Lin Shun. Lin Shun immediately said, "Senior, Ping in, I'll leave them to you." The 2 nodded and Lin Ping pouted. She still wanted to fight with the strongest enemy. It wasn't that Lin Shun didn't trust Lin Ping but Zhao Lingtian's sword was too sharp. Ordinary experts would be sliced by the sword if they weren't careful. Nothing could stop the sword, other than Fong Ling, who had the same level of sword will and saber will. Only Lang Fanyun and the other 2 could barely block it. Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun's battle prowess had increased by leaps and bounds. After their saint weapons and arts were strengthened, their battle prowess had at least doubled. But against Qing Tian's Sword King, they were only able to hold their own. The battle between the 3 shocked the entire sword domain. Lin Shun frowned and thought to himself, what a guy. A Sword King with godlike sword intent is actually this strong. If I had continued to fight after successfully stealing from the Genesis headquarters, I'm afraid that Jin Taichu and Jiang Poi would have been enough to deal with me. On the other side, when Lin Ping and Elder Xianyu stopped the 2 Sword Kings and 2 Saint Kings, the east of the sword domain was filled with the aftermath of the battle. When Lin Shun looked up, he could vaguely feel that there was something in the sky of the sword domain. That's right, it was fate. Although Lin Shun had 100 saint points, half of them were virtual saint points. In terms of battle prowess, he was comparable to a Saint King. But in terms of cultivation level, to be precise, he hadn't opened the eye of Saint King. Thus, Lin Shun couldn't see the existence of fate. However, Jiang Taishu told him that as long as he attacked the point where the fate was the most concentrated and blasted open the gate of fate, the fate of the sword domain would be completely released like the other domains. Shua. Lin Shun couldn't care less about the other battles. He activated his movement skill and rushed straight towards the gate of fate. 2 of his 6 avatars immediately moved to stop the remaining experts of the Eternal Sword Sect, not giving them a chance to disturb him. Clang! Suddenly, a sword hum resounded, and a peerless sword intent that had transformed into a white dragon slashed down from the 9 heavens. Lin Shun was caught off guard. He used his movement technique at lightning speed, and his 4 clones used their ultimate techniques to attack the white dragon sword will. Heaven Burning Arrow, Divine Bird Swallows the Sea, Slowing Rune, Ninefold Burning Sky Palm, Lotus Dance, Dark Lightning, 10,000 June. Spear light flashed, and saber light and sword shadows danced in the sky. Bang, bang, bang. The sword will exploded, and Lin Chun retreated rapidly. His eyes narrowed. He couldn't hit it? Ha ha! Lin Chun, do you really think that this king is only cultivating in seclusion? Zhao Lingtian's laughter was wild and arrogant. While he was killing Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun with a sword in his hand, he sneered ferociously. The gate of destiny of the sword domain has already accumulated the sword wills from my seclusion for 100 eras. Every sword will is comparable to the attack of multiple saint kings. Lin Chun, how are you going to break my sword domain's destiny? I have already sent a voice transmission to the other top 10 saint talents on the saint talent list. They are also the controllers of a portion of fate. You are courageous to provoke the Genesis Alliance, but if you dare to provoke the sword domain's sword sect, you are courting death. As long as the saint talents have their eyes on you, you will definitely die. Zhao Lingtian's wild laughter made Lin Chun narrow his eyes as he looked at Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun. Fong Ling and Lang Fanyun weren't weak. It was just that the experts they faced previously were very strong. For example, the Einerjar clan didn't even have a saint weapon back then, so they couldn't fight back. But now, there was a qualitative difference. Firstly, the saint weapon had returned. Secondly, their techniques and saint weapons had all been strengthened by leaps and bounds. They were no longer the same as before. As for the sword will and saber will, they were the closest to peri-celestial and imminent god. Zhao Lingtian couldn't suppress them when they worked together. Zhao Lingtian continued to laugh sinisterly. Before my sword will is exhausted, it is comparable to dozens of powerful saint kings guarding here and attacking together. If you want to release the sword domain's destiny, you'll have to find 100 saint kings first. Ha ha ha! Lin Chun shouted coldly. Fong Ling, Lang Fanyun, beat this son of a B****. Don't talk nonsense for him. Roger. The two received the order and brandished their sabers and swords. With a clang, their attacks instantly multiplied. Zhao Lingtian was immediately forced to fight with his full strength by the two, who were almost going all out. Lin Chun turned around and faced the peerless sword will that gradually revealed itself in the surging sea of clouds above the sky. The sword wills were almost tangible. They were blank and distinct, covering the sky and earth. There were actually layers of sword webs, and what formed the sword webs were actually peerless and sharp sword wills. There were a total of 3 layers of sword webs, and each layer sword was even stronger. Lin Chun's eyes bloomed with powerful boldness and confidence. He smiled coldly. Equivalent to a group of saint kings? Then I will destroy them all. Saint Dragon Possession. Wong. Lin Chun's pure strength suddenly soared from 600,000 to 990,000. Lin Chun laughed wildly. You came at the right time. After killing so many saint kings and saint geniuses, all 5 of my God of War set have reached 88% energy. I have nowhere to use them. God of War set fully activate. A ray of God of War's golden light was dazzling, illuminating the sky. Lin Chun's battle intense sword, and his divine light was unparalleled. Boom, boom, boom. The peerless divine light that crossed the sword realm surged out from Lin Chun's body. 1 million saint powers, 2 million saint powers, 3 million saint powers. 4 million saint powers. It reached 5 million saint powers, and it was still rising. The space between heaven and earth trembled, and the airflow turned into a whirlpool. With Lin Chun as the center, pure strength was released, and it shattered the surroundings. Lin Chun's pure strength continued to soar, like a hurricane. F***CK your sword. You want to dominate the chi flow? Open for me. Lin Chun raised his fist and punched toward the sky. The golden light of the God of War shot out from his fist, and it crushed the stars and shattered the universe. The sea of sword intent in the void sensed it, and it immediately shot down a large amount of sword intent. The void of sword intent was sharp and sharp, It could be said to be the most terrifying wave of attacks in the world. Without saying a word, Lin Chen's clone followed closely behind and immediately launched an attack. Boom! Bang! Bang! Lin Chen and his clone faced the wave of sword intent head-on, and their fists shattered the sword intent. Lin Chen's pure strength soared all the way to 6 million saint powers, and it was still more. It still did not stop. Life and death are nothing. If you don't accept it, then fight. What the hell is this eternal sword sect? Open for me. Lin Chen, who was clad in golden armor and glowing with golden light, advanced triumphantly. His legs were as ferocious as a wild dragon, and his aura could swallow the world. Every strike shattered the sky and cleared away a piece of turbidity. His punches were as tyrannical as the stars, and they pierced through the universe. Every punch could turn the sword intent into stars in the sky. In the sky above the sword realm, terrifying and devastating explosions were constantly reverberating. Every strand of sword intent that was shattered was still surging in all directions. Lin Chen's aura was overbearing, and it was as if it could swallow the world. The sword intent that was in his way crushed all that stood in his way, and it shocked the many experts and elders of the Sword's Gate. Is he still human? He actually destroyed countless omnipotent sword intents, and that was the peak of the Sword Dao. Chapter 1730. Sword Region, Hao Ran Palace. Today, Hao Ran Palace's palace master and his grand elder were discussing a plan to retreat. Now that Sword Region was dominated by one sect, their providence was cut off, and all the sects in Sword Region were suppressed. Even if all the rank 9 sects in Sword Region worked together, they would not be able to open the door of providence. Very simple, they could not defeat the Eternal Sword Sect. The Sky High Sword King could crush all the other Sword Kings. The strongest Sword King, his sword intent was divine. Since ancient times, other than the sword gods that were born in Sword Region, no one could be compared to him. In addition, the Eternal Sword Sect wanted to be on good terms with the Genesis era. Once this trend was out, all the rank 9 sects moved. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a sudden spatial vibration attracted Hao Ran Palace Master's attention. That direction is Hao Ran Palace Master looked into the distance and activated his sword intent. When he looked into the void, his expression changed drastically. Eternal Sword Sect? Someone actually started a war in their territory? Who was it that dared to draw their sword against the Eternal Sword Sect? Let's go take a look. Sword Region, Jade Sword Pavilion. The Pavilion Master, who was in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. A formless sword intent split the void as he looked a million miles away. His eyes narrowed. Good fellow, there is actually someone who dares to draw their sword against the Sky High Sword King. Today, I want to see which hero has the guts to do so. Rumble. The Jade Sword Pavilion Master turned into a Jade Dragon Sword Light and flew 100,000 miles away. Sword Region, Divine Sword Valley. The white-haired old man holding the sword trembled slightly. The dust on his old body that had been sleeping for hundreds of eras started to melt like snow in the morning sun. He bathed in the spring and shone brightly. He stood up. His old eyes were as sharp as swords as he looked into the distance. The old man said hoarsely, "Who is it?" Saber intent, sword intent. No. That terrifying wave of sword intent is dissipating. He was surprised. His figure gradually disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of thousands of miles away. It was as if he had teleported. On this day, the battle of the Eternal Sword Sect had shocked the entire Sword Region. All the big shots of Sword Region had come. They were really curious as to who dared to attack the sky-risking Sword King. The number of 8th-rank sects in the Sword Realm was one of the highest. If it were not for the fact that the 8th-rank sects did not have enough resources to watch the battle, they would even be willing to personally witness this historic moment. Regardless of success or failure, at least in this world, there was still someone who dared to challenge the strongest Sword King. Hall Master Hao Ran and a group of elders, Divine Sword Valley Elder, Jade Sword Pavilion Master, Taiji Palace Chief Elder. When the experts arrived, Palace Master Hao Ran's eyes widened and his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. The Jade Sword Pavilion Master's pupils shrank as he felt his scalp go numb. Oh my god, swords! Is this really something a human would do? Their gazes were fixated on the figure shining with golden divine radiance above them. His fist shattered heaven and earth, and his legs swept across the galaxy. Every punch and every kick was ferociously and savagely bombarding that wave of sword intent. Bang! 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 Streaks of peerless sword intent that could injure or even kill Saint Kings, manifesting supreme sword techniques from the primordial age, struck down one after another, and all of them were destroyed by a single punch. Lin Shen's pure strength, which exceeded 6 million honorable powers, directly shook the Sword King's wave of sword intent. Lin Shen had previously used the God Slayer talent to temporarily enter the God Slayer state, and the Saint power he unleashed was comparable to 6 million honorable powers. However, using Saint power required the use of battle techniques, and pure strength did not. Pure strength could be used at the fastest speed to unleash the highest explosive power. It was as if Lin Shan was using his doppelgangers to protect himself, and his fists smashed through the thousands of sword intents as he violently attacked. Lin Shen's aura was like a hot knife through butter, and his pure strength actually soared to 7 million honorable powers. For the first time, Zhao Ling Tian was in a mess, and his rhythm was messed up as he fought with Fong Ling and Fong Ling. If this continued, the 100 years of sword intent that he had accumulated might not be able to withstand this fellow. What kind of joke is this? My condensed sword intent should be able to withstand the attacks of an entire region's Saint Kings. Could this fellow's continuous attacks be able to withstand the attacks of an entire region of the 36 regions? Bang! Lin Shen's fists were like a raging storm, and his fists smashed through the surging sword intent. It was the third-level sword intent of the Gate of Destiny. Golden body of the God of War. Lin Shan activated the special characteristic of the God of War set, and his entire body was covered with a layer of faint golden light. It was as if he had been coated with a layer of divine light, and it blocked a large amount of explosive sword intent. The more he fought, the more ferocious he became. His fists were as if they were splitting open the sky, and his legs were fiercely attacking. In fact, when the battle was at its peak, a sharp sword intent shot towards him like a poisonous snake. Lin Shen's 10 fingers suddenly pierced through the sword intent that was like a long snake that could split open the heavens and the earth. Then he pulled his hands horizontally and tore apart the sword intent. The Hao Ran Palace's elders' eyes almost popped out of their sockets, tearing the sword intent with his bare hands. The peerless sword intent of the sword intent realm. Every sword intent was equivalent to the sword technique of the first Sword King. How could this young man be as strong as a monster? Bang, bang, bang. The sword intent exploded, turning into fragments of light that fell onto the young man's body that was swirling with golden light. It was as if the God of War had split open the heavens. At this moment, all the Sword Realm experts were stunned. This was the first time in the history of the Sword Realm that such a scene had happened. He was enveloped in divine light, and the golden divine light was boundless. He stood tall and stood on the Sword Realm's Dragon of Destiny, looking down on all living beings in the Sword Realm. His fists were like the power to shatter the laws of heaven and earth, and each of his fists brazenly crushed the surging sword intent without fear. Bang! Boom! Lin Shen destroyed the third-level sword intent wave, and the Gate of Destiny began to show signs of shattering. The last sword intent was the strongest sword intent that the Sky High Sword King had condensed for many centuries. The Sky High Sword King, who was unable to personally fight Lin Shen, let out a hysterical roar. Sky High Sword Intent, go! Kill this kid! This sword was the Sky-High Sword King's final trump card to dominate the Gate of Destiny, and it had been brewing for many centuries. He even had the confidence to kill more than 10 Sage Kings with this sword. Boom, boom, boom. The largest sword intent was like a heavenly dragon suppressing the world. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws at Lin Shun, revealing a peerless sharpness as it swooped down. Lin Shun was brazen and fearless. His body was enveloped in endless divine light and golden brilliance, and he rushed toward the Gate of Destiny on the Dragon of Destiny beneath his feet. Wisps of destiny leaked out from the Gate of Destiny, and Lin Shun sensed that this strange power was like the wills of countless dead sword cultivators before they died. It surged into his vital spirit, and it instantly ignited Lin Chen's anger and emotions. Almost instinctively, Lin Shun carried the power of destiny and roared toward the sky, using the power of destiny to spread throughout the entire sword realm. Shout, sword sages! Roar, sword cultivators! Entrust the will of the sword Tao to the new era. Divine light shone, and burning hot blood burst forth from Lin Chen's body. It was as hot as blood and fire, and his power skyrocketed. Putting everything on the line, Lin Shun punched out fiercely. Everywhere the fist wind passed, it instantly shattered the endless space. With Lin Chen's fist as the center, a golden vortex formed and collided head-on with the sky-scraping Sword Monarch's strongest sword intent. The gigantic heavenly dragon-shaped sword intent suddenly trembled. The fist wind swept through heaven, earth, sun, and moon. Boom! Bam! In the eastern sky of the sword domain, sword lights exploded and filled the sky like fragments of light, scattering everywhere and illuminating the horizon. The young man, shrouded in golden brilliance, stepped on endless golden light as he stood in the middle of the shattered sword intent vortex. When he retracted his fist, he looked like a god of war splitting open the sky, and he grinned. This scene is really not a normal kind of delightful. In front of him, the Gate of Destiny that stood high above heaven and earth was covered in cracks. With a crack, it completely shattered. The Gate of Destiny had shattered. The Sword Realm's destiny had been completely liberated. Chapter 1731. Many experts from the sword domain stared at this scene in shock. They stared at Lin Chun in astonishment. They were shocked and in disbelief. It was as if a beam of light had suddenly shone into the endless darkness. Moreover, this beam of light came with ease and left with pride. When it shone in, it had already expelled all the darkness. The supreme experts of the various rank 9 sects seemed to have understood something and felt something in their hearts. The door of providence that had collapsed gradually disintegrated. There was no sound, but one could feel the space trembling violently and rippling continuously. Then, like a meteor shower, the scattered power of providence was thrown further and further away. All the swordsmen in the sacred boundary who had comprehended the sword had a new understanding and perception at this moment. In the endless darkness of the sword Tao, they saw a candle flame. The candle flame grew bigger and bigger until it finally became a bright lamp that illuminated the distance. Although the end of the light was still very far away, the sword Tao was no longer dark. No! Zhao Lingtian roared like a madman. He held his sword with both hands. His blood, qi, and primordial spirit suddenly became a few times more violent. His vitality dimmed and disappeared, but his strength skyrocketed. He slashed with his sword. An array of light shot across the sky. Although the area was not big, it instantly pushed Fong Ling and Lang Fanyan back. This sword was not inferior to the power of the strongest sword, just now. Lang Fanyan spat out blood. His flesh felt as if it had been pierced and minced by the sword will. He was in so much pain that even his saber was almost shattered. He was on the verge of death. That sword was the sword that Zhao Lingtian had used up all his vitality. Zhao Lingtian did not care too much. He turned around and charged toward Lin Shun. Lin Shun, I'm going to kill you. Zhao Lingtian was furious. His hair was messy, and his expression was hysterical. He charged with his sword and stabbed out. His sword will pierced through the void. Clang! The sound of a sword whistled through the sky, and the sword light came to intercept him. Clang! Fong Ling blocked in front of Zhao Lingtian with his sword. His expression was fierce, and when he held his sword against Zhao Lingtian, his gaze was especially sharp. Zhao Lingtian's pupils shrank. This guy's sword intent, could it be? Blood trickled down from the corner of Lang Fanyan's mouth. For the first time, he grinned and said, I'll let you walk in front of me this time. I'll catch up very soon, old friend. Rumble. A peerless sword intent soared into the sky from Fong Ling's body. Clang, clang, clang. At this moment, the numerous swords of the Eternal Sword Sect were all bowing towards the two people in the air. Myriad sacred swords worshipped, comprehending the sword intent with the heart. Godlike sword intent. At this moment, Fong Ling's sword intent was at the same level as Zhao Lingtian. They were both at the sword intent divinity realm. He actually entered. His talent is still so monstrous. The moment the light from Providence was released, you stepped into that realm without any hesitation. Fong Ling, oh Fong Ling, you are still alive. You are my greatest obstacle. Zhao Lingtian's mind was shaken. However, he still pretended to be calm on the surface. He growled savagely. Fong Ling, what right do you have to fight me? In terms of sword essence, I have been in it for longer than you. In terms of cultivation, I have accumulated more than you. You can't beat me. Zhao Lingtian waved his sword angrily. 1,000 slashes in an instant. Fong Ling was calm. He was like a burning flame that was burning brighter and brighter. You are wrong, Zhao Lingtian. This is not about whether I can beat you or not. Clang! Fong Ling drew his sword and slashed horizontally. He blocked all of Zhao Lingtian's attacks as he spoke calmly. It is about whether I must stand in front of you at this moment. For my lord, I have already disregarded life and death. This sword is beyond life and death. The number 1 sword king of the sacred boundary. Take this. Fong Ling held his sword and slashed violently at Zhao Lingtian's head. The terrifying sword intent sliced open the sky. Clang, 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 clang. The sword intent sliced open the heavens and the earth. When it sliced open the space, just the remnants of the sword intent created a deep abyss. Zhao Lingtian held his sword with both hands. When he blocked the sword above his head, his body emitted a creaking sound. His sacred bones were being squeezed. This guy's sword intent will only advance and not retreat. He is using all of his sacred power. He wants to risk his life with me. Is he crazy? I have finally achieved the sword intent divine connection, and he wants to risk his life with me? Zhao Lingtian was completely shocked. He was shocked by Fong Ling's boldness. His sword technique should only advance and not retreat. This should be the highlight of his life. Retreating was the best choice for him, but he chose to fight him. There was a difference in their cultivation levels. Fong Ling still chose to attack fiercely. Every strike was a gamble with his life. He did not care about winning or losing. He only wanted to use his life to block Zhao Lingtian's attack. Lunatic, a complete lunatic. This Lin Shun was a lunatic. Everyone around him was a lunatic too. Clang, clang, clang. Zhao Lingtian was once again entangled in the battle. Fong Ling's power continued to rise. The realm of his sword intent continued to deepen. If it was not for the restriction of fate, he would have already reached the sword intent divine connection realm. Not to mention, after being suppressed in the sacred prison for countless eras, he could now freely control his sword intent. His way of the sword was fully unleashed, giving Zhao Lingtian a ferocious feeling that he could only die. Even Zhao Lingtian could not take him down. On the other side, Lin Shun was standing on the dragon of fate. The power of fate was slowly dissipating. Lin Shun was slightly surprised. According to his estimation, the previous punch should not have been enough to instantly crush the sky-reaching Sword King's strongest sword intent. When Lin Shun activated the power of his primordial spirit to look around, he found a group of people in the direction where the fluctuations of fate were dissipating. A group of incomplete figures, like the afterglow of the setting sun. They carried swords on their backs, carried swords, held swords, and listened to swords. But at the same time, their gazes were quietly fixed on Lin Shun. Their expressions were as if they had let go of something important. In the end, they gradually disappeared into nothingness. Lin Shun was not the only one who witnessed this scene. The experts who came to watch the battle were all shocked. Lin Shun smiled knowingly. So it's them, those experts of the way of the sword who died. Their fates were imprisoned here together. That's why when the gate of fate was broken midway, their sword intent was released together with the strange domain. That punch was not only my power, but also their sword intent. After understanding the reason, Lin Shun took advantage of the opportunity when the power of fate was floating out before it completely dissipated to release his primordial spirit and attach it to the power of fate. He shouted coldly, "Sword cultivators of the world, listen to my command. I am Lin Shun. I follow the will of the sages of the way of the sword and inform all sword cultivators. From now on, the way of the sword will no longer be restricted by fate. Everyone on the way of the sword will be like a dragon. Rumble." This voice transmission, along with the power of fate, began to gradually spread throughout the sacred boundary. Presumably, soon, all sword cultivators who had comprehended sword intent would receive Lin Chen's words. And more power of fate began to spread throughout the sacred boundary, with the sword domain as the center. In the end, it all turned into clouds and merged into the 36 domains. Chapter 1732. While Elder Blackmoon was fending off a Sage King and a Sword King, there was a hint of hope and surprise in her eyes. She looked at the young man standing on the gate of Providence in the sky and muttered to herself, "I didn't expect him to really do it. Ruoyan, this lass, has really chosen an impressive man. With the current situation, the holy world will probably undergo a drastic change because of him." However, Elder Blackmoon's gaze became even sharper. The more aggressive he was, the more serious the consequences would be. Lin Shun had shattered the gate of Providence and released the Providence of the Sword Realm. She knew very well what kind of chain reaction it would cause. Back then, Zhao Ling Tian had the help of many hidden forces to condense and block Providence. They had a very close relationship with the top 10 on the Saint Talent ranking. This battle would definitely attract the attention of the top 10 monsters on the Saint Talent ranking. Lin Shun would become the target of public criticism. This little guy is powerful, but he's also good at stirring up trouble. The Divine Flame Palace will have to fight several tough battles soon. It's really annoying. I'm already a bunch of old bones, but he still wants to use me as a fighting force. Elder Blackmoon was helpless. Seeing that this little guy could help her improve her mental cultivation technique and had signs of a breakthrough, she would help him with all her strength. On the other side, Zhao Lingtian witnessed this scene with his own eyes, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His years of accumulation had gone down the drain, and he even wanted to rush up and kill Lin Shun with his sword. However, Fong Ling stood in front of him stubbornly and even fought with him at the cost of getting injured. Rumble. Lin Chen's 4 doppelgangers rushed towards Zhao Ling Tian aggressively. They surrounded Zhao Ling Tian and coordinated with Fong Ling to attack Zhao Ling Tian. When the Providence disappeared, there was actually a golden attribute treasure chest left in the void. Lin Chen reached out and grabbed it. Host has opened the Divine Material Treasure chest and obtained a special Divine Material Fragment, 3/3. Host has completed collection. Host can fuse a special divine material at any time. A divine material. Lin Shun was wild with joy. The significance of this item was no small matter. Lin Shun had to find time to take it out. Any divine grade material was extremely valuable to Lin Chun. Lin Chun suddenly turned around. His eyes flickered with a ruthless light, as if he was not afraid of wearing shoes. He said sternly, "All that's left is the culprit behind the sealing of fate. Kill him." Boom! Lin Chun stepped in the void and charged towards Zhao Lingtian. On the other side, among the sword domain experts, Hall Master Hao Ran sensed the new path of the sword Dao that was being guided by fate. He said in a daze, Is this real? I can actually sense the path of the sword intent again. As long as I go into seclusion, the sword intent can rise again. The pavilion master of the Jade Sword Pavilion said intoxicatedly, "My intrinsic sword intent actually saw the candle flame of the sword Dao. It's all thanks to this kid." Divine Sword Valley's old man Divine Sword did not say anything. He simply placed his hand on the sword hilt. Whoosh! The next moment, Elder Divine Sword disappeared. In the increasingly intense battle circle, boom! Lin Chen's fist split open the sky and landed on Zhao Lingtian's back. A crack appeared on his defensive sacred artifact, the violet gold flowing blade armor. Rip! Lin Chen's leg was like a saber that crushed everything. Zhao Lingtian was forced to use his sword to forcefully block Lin Chen's attack. A gigantic, heaven-splitting sword descended from the heavens, bringing with it an unstoppable, God-span sword intent. Not only that, but in front of Zhao Lingtian, an auspicious light shot into the sky. The space was charred black, and it was like a rolling fire dragon that shot out. In an instant, 5 sky-burning arrows appeared. Immediately after, the sword intent that was like a thunder dragon suddenly exploded, and an ancient sword that was as ancient as a spring stabbed towards Zhao Lingtian. 5 shadows divine blade sword. Zhao Lingtian circulated his sacred power, and his aura exploded. He raised his sword and slashed. He actually used a completely new sword technique. His sword slashed out 5 sword marks that resembled divine shadows. His sword intent was like a swimming dragon that crushed everyone's attacks. As he retreated, Zhao Lingtian's expression turned ugly as he shouted coldly, "Damn it! You old bastard, you want to join in as well?" Elder Divine sword floated in the air. He looked like an immortal as he held the ancient sword in his hand. The sword's body was faint blue, and it reflected the resolute and unwavering gaze in his old eyes. This person is the last person that my Divine Sword region's ancestors entrusted their will to. My body should also respond to his call. I've long wanted to challenge you. Zhao Lingtian, I don't plan on going back alive today. Clang! Elder Divine sword slashed diagonally with his sword, creating a path of blood. His Deshang stage sword intense soared into the sky. Lunatics! All of you are lunatics. Zhao Lingtian cursed as he was besieged. Lin Chen didn't care. It was their business if they wanted to help him. He only had one problem now, and that was to beat the first Sword King. The wind from his fists was as sharp as a knife, shattering the space. Lin Chen's fists were like fierce dragons as he punched Zhao Lingtian. Even Lang Fanyun endured his injuries and joined the besieging party. The Sky-High Sword King was being besieged by Lin Chun, his 4 clones, Lang Fanyun, Elder Divine Sword, and Feng Ling, but he was still undefeated. He deserved to be called the strongest Sword King. Very good, Lin Chun. This time, this seat counts as your win. But don't think about ending well. Things won't be so simple. Zhao Lingtian activated his spatial saint artifact, the phaseless transference cloak, and entered the void. With a series of flashes, Lin Chun seemed to have predicted this, and suddenly sent a telepathic message. Buzz! 2 huge space blades appeared out of thin air and slashed down like a pair of sharp scissors. Splat! A tearing sound filled the sky, and Zhao Lingtian's spatial teleportation was interrupted. What? Spatial divine technique. Zhao Lingtian's expression changed slightly. Whoosh! Lin Chun turned into a beam of golden light and flew toward him. His clone stepped on clouds and flew toward him. When they appeared, they each threw a punch. Bang! 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 Zhao Lingtian was caught off guard. His last bit of defense was broken, and he vomited blood on the spot. Chrono Transcendence Talent. Host used Chrono Transcendence 5 times. 5 million top-level talent points have been consumed. Whoosh! A beam of green light flashed past, and Lin Chun, his 4 clones, and the Sky-High Sword King all disappeared. When Zhao Lingtian reappeared, he was already in a grayish-white space. There were no boundaries around him, and it was as if there was no end to it. What the hell is this place? A spatial sacred artifact? No, it's not that simple. Zhao Lingtian was shocked. Could this be the God creation space? Lin Chun and his clones appeared together. He laughed mockingly. You can also think of it as the God creation space. The first Sword King is really difficult to deal with. I need my clones to use Chrono Transcendence 5 times to have a high chance of pulling you in. Lin Chen's smile gradually turned cold. However, the story of the first Sword King will end today. System: absolute life and death. The enemy has hostility and killing intent toward the host. Host has successfully chosen a target. 4 million top-level talent points have been consumed. The orange flame of life instantly burned and covered Lin Chen's entire body. Boom, boom, boom. The golden light of the god of war shot up into the sky and lit up the entire Chrono Transcendence dimension. Endless divine light surrounded Lin Chun and rose rapidly. Zhao Lingtian was shocked. Lin Chen's pure strength was still rising. Once absolute life and death was activated, there was no way out. Lin Chun and Zhao Lingtian's fight to the death would not end until the death. Chapter 1733. Feeling Lin Chen's change, Zhao Lingtian's pupils constricted. Are you crazy? You're burning your own life force. Are you going to fight me to the death? I have no enmity with you. It's not enough that I've released my providence. Do you want to take my life? Lin Chen laughed mockingly. Who says I'm going to die? I'm indeed burning my life force to fight. But if you want me to die with you, you're thinking too much. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The intense energy vibration became scorching hot, making people's hearts palpitate. Lin Chen's 4 clones, on the bowstring, on the tip of the sword, and on the edge of the saber, had 5 lantern-shaped, 9-colored light spheres spinning around. They were magnificent and magnificent. Zhao Lingtian's heart trembled. This kid actually had such a terrifying weapon. Try this, first Sword King. Lin Chun snapped his fingers. His clones either drew their blades, slashed with their swords, or shot with their bows. A total of 29 colored balls of energy shot toward him. With this attack, all 4 clones had used up all their saint power. Zhao Lingtian immediately held his sword. His illuminating God Realm sword intent wrapped around the blade. Once again, he used the 5-shadow divine blade sword. This time, he used his strongest sword intent. His primordial spirit and saint power were instantly consumed. 5-blade absolute divine blade hidden. Star explosion. 5 sword lights that were as graceful as swimming dragons and 29 colored star cores exploded with a loud boom. Boom. Bang. 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 The terrifying energy swept through the entire dimension. Lin Chen did not think that this wave of attacks would be able to kill the strongest Sword King. Rip! The wild flow of energy tore apart, and within the apocalyptic mushroom cloud of energy, a figure rushed in. It was Lin Chun. He raised his hand into a fist and aimed it at Zhao Lingtian's head. This guy can actually ignore the energy shockwaves and move forward? Zhao Lingtian was shocked. He had just used his sword intent. He had no choice but to use his saint power to slash with his sword. His fists and feet attacked, and his sword slashed rapidly. Lin Chun fought head-on with the golden-armored kicks and fists. He was not afraid of his sword at all. Clang, clang, clang. The two of them fought in close combat. More and more wounds appeared on Zhao Lingtian's body. From time to time, there were small explosions of pure energy in his body. His skin and flesh were torn open, and his saint body was bleeding profusely. His blood was boiling. What a strange attack. Not only can my injuries not be healed, there's even a strange power that has seeped in my body, ignoring my sword intent protection and actually exploding from within. Zhao Ling Tian was shocked once again. Lin Chen's methods had exceeded his understanding again and again. 100 images, godly steps. With a sprinkle of his essence blood and a wave of his cloak, Zhao Ling Tian attempted to flee into the void. He traveled tens of thousands of miles, frantically activating his spatial saint artifact to quickly leave Lin Chen's attack range. However, he noticed to his astonishment that no matter how he fled, he was unable to escape this space, nor was he able to tear open the boundaries of this space. It was as if there was no way out in this eternal space-time. Any means of escape would be useless. It's all thanks to your escape that I gained some time to recover. As Lin Chen's laughter reverberated through the air, his 4 avatars appeared in perfect condition once more. This time, Zhao Ling Tian was completely dumbfounded. What kind of joke is this? Is this a F***king illusion? I've really seen a ghost today. Just now, he had clearly sensed that all of Lin Chen's avatars had exhausted their saint powers. How could they have recovered in such a short time? T. Even if this was the best divine pill, there would still be a refining process. Double star explosion. This is for you. Whoosh. Rumble. The avatars once again used Annihilation Star Explosion to attack Zhao Ling Tian in all directions. Host has activated the Annihilation Explosion and Annihilation Split Creation talents 4 times. Zhao Ling Tian quickly waved his sword, and the sword intent split the remaining energy waves. He covered his wounds and crazily swallowed pills. The broken saint artifact continued to heal his wounds. He did not even care about how strong the energy of the divine pill was and how many damaged meridians. He only had one thought now, and that was to kill Lin Chen. Apart from killing him, there was no other way to escape from this space. The air was torn apart. Lin Chen once again activated his pure strength. The golden body of the god of war protected his entire body. He did not care about how many times Zhao Ling Tian had activated the Annihilation Explosion and Annihilation Split Creation talents. He continued to attack Zhao Ling Tian at close range. He did not give him a chance at all. Consumed 1,600,000 divine rune energy, replenishing all of the saint powers consumed by the avatars. Seeing that Lin Chen's avatars had begun to recover their saint powers at lightning speed, Zhao Ling Tian finally revealed a look of fear. This was the closest he had been to death ever since he became the first Sword King. Lin Chen, how about we have a good talk? I still have the coordinates of many secret space treasures. I can give them all to you. I can help you surpass all the holy kings in no time. Yes, I can also help you gather providence and let you become the person who controls the providence of a territory. Don't kill me. We can talk about it. I can also help you enter the top 5 of the Saint Talent Roll. Lin Chen, join forces with me. Lin Chen suddenly swung his fist down. Divine light surged as he shouted angrily, "Join forces, my ass." Cutting off one's providence is undoubtedly cutting off one's path to wealth and killing one's parents. You have monopolized providence for so many years and even framed Fong Ling. If I don't kill you, I will be letting myself down. Bang! He knocked Zhao Ling Tian back with a punch. His pupils constricted, and a piercing cold light shot straight to the top of his head. At this moment, Lin Chen's 4 avatars were holding the Annihilation Star Explosion, which overflowed with destructive energy. Wait, Lin Chen! Crawl! He drew his bow, and the arrow shot out like a dragon. He raised his sword and slashed forward. The Annihilation Star Explosion of the avatars once again swarmed forward. Rumble. This time, Zhao Ling Tian's sword intent and remaining defensive sacred artifacts were not enough to block Lin Chen's 3rd wave of attacks. Although Lin Chen's sacred power was only equivalent to that of an ordinary sacred king, His instant light split shadow and extreme god possession increased the power of the Annihilation Star explosion by several levels. After 3 consecutive attacks, the entire space-time dimension trembled. A moment later, the host has killed the enemy target. The absolute life and death state has been removed. Elemental light balls and treasures filled the sky and scattered in the space-time dimension. Zhao Lingtian's body floated in the air. Zhao Lingtian was unable to completely withstand the 3rd wave of Annihilation Star explosion. In terms of pure power, the 3rd star explosion was actually not enough to completely kill Zhao Lingtian. However, the chain reaction caused by Lin Chen's annihilation explosion and annihilation was too strong. It began to destroy his sacred body from the inside. Even his primordial spirit was destroyed. He did not even have a chance to counterattack. The sword intent is really strong. Even this can't destroy you. The sword intent can be used to protect the body and also become the strongest attack. I'm so envious. When can I get one too? Lin Shen glanced at Zhao Lingtian's body. Lin Shen was rather envious. The number 1 sword king who was known as the strongest in the holy world had come to an end. A dazzling attribute treasure chest floated in front of Lin Shen. Chapter 1734. The path of intent required a long time of accumulation, and it was not a realm that Lin Shen could learn. At least, the current version of the system did not have the ability to comprehend intent. Lin Shen had the system, but it did not mean that he was omniscient. Every expert's methods accumulated over countless years were very unique and powerful. They had their own path and path. Even if Lin Shen had the system, he could not complete the path that the other party had accumulated over hundreds or thousands of years. Host has received 25,900 top-tier Heaven's Path points, 250, 9 billion Sacred Grade Essence points, 16 billion Sacred Grade Set Essence points, 92 million Intermediate Strengthening points, 2, 3 billion Sacred Grade Spiritual Power, 16, 6 billion Sacred Grade Health points, 40,000 Metal Type Energy, 190,000 Sacred Grade Rune Energy, 520,000 Sacred Grade Technique Essence points. When the doppelganger took away the attribute light balls, Lin Shen's attribute points soared. Especially the set essence points, they skyrocketed. The foundation of the strongest Sword King, especially when he had so many 9th grade Saint artifacts, had been destroyed by Lin Shen. The amount of set essences he had dropped could be said to be enormous. Not only did it deplete Lin Shen's Aries set this time, but also increased the Aries set's charge to 95%. Kaboom! After Zhao Lingtian died, only a dazzling attribute treasure chest with orange light lingering around it was left behind. The surface of the treasure chest was covered with a faint divine light, as if it was divine. Lin Shen was filled with curiosity as he reached out to grab it. Host has received a supreme grade, God grade material treasure chest. Upon opening it, 1 9-fold divine star. Buzz! When the attribute treasure chest opened, a green agate as bright as the stars floated in the space-time dimension. Dazzling divine light shone from the agate jade. The magical thing was that the agate jade contained 9 different colors, and each of the divine light contained a different energy. 9-fold divine star. It's actually a divine grade, or how magical. Just holding it gives me the illusion that the stars, sun, and moon are in my hands. Lin Chen's heart throbbed. This was a divine material that could be used to refine divine artifacts. But most importantly, it was the raw material for the 6th piece of the Aries set. Lin Chen did not care about cleaning up the attribute points and spoils of war. He directly put them into the Fate Plant pouch and immediately left the hyperspace dimension. Back in the outside world, Lang Fanyan saw Lin Chen and immediately asked, "Master, are you all right?" Lin Chen smiled and nodded. "They're all minor injuries. It's no big deal." Fong Ling hesitated for a moment before saying, "My lord, that guy, Lin Chen said he's dead. I killed him in the space I created." If he died in the outside world, the death of Qingtian's Sword King would cause a new phenomenon. However, the super space-time isolated the aura of the outside world, so outsiders could not sense it. Unless it was a saint talent like the Saint Talent List. The Saint Talent List had an absolute connection and maintained the destiny of the human race. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of many sword domain experts were extremely interesting. Dead? The number one Sword King actually really perished? That was the master of the Sword's Gate that was said to be indestructible. There was once a divination master who predicted that if the sword god did not appear, even if the sword domain gathered all their forces, they might not be able to take down the eternal Sword's Gate. At this time, Lin Ping flew over and said, unhappily, those guys ran pretty fast. I can't believe I didn't manage to kill them. How annoying. Lin Shen laughed and said, we don't have time to chase after them. We still have things to do. Lin Shen did not blame Lin Ping. If a Saint King cultivator insisted on running away, it would be very difficult to kill him in a one-on-one battle. The reason why Lin Shen was able to kill Saint Kings so many times before was because he had the advantage of numbers and the ultimate heaven-defying beasts. In addition, he also had the advantage of speed. Otherwise, how could Saint King realm experts be killed so easily? Lin Ping smiled and said, then let's not bother about them. In order to appease my anger, I found some good stuff. As he finished, Lin Ping threw a few supreme-grade spatial rings and 5 high-grade fate plant pouches to Lin Shen. Lin Shen caught them and realized that they were the assets of the Eternal Sword's Gate. He gave him a thumbs up and called him an expert. Professional, too professional. I'm liking this girl more and more. As expected of someone who follows me. So nimble. Lin Shen did not say anything and released the Saint Dragon. The humanoid Saint Dragon pushed his palm forward and activated the Yin-Yang Divine Dragon Bloodline ability. The vast and profound Yin-Yang Dragon Chi in his palms was filled with an immortal aura. It enveloped Lang Fanyun and turned into 2 Yin-Yang dragons. His injuries were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. Immortal creation. Lin Shen's Yin-Yang Divine Dragon Bloodline ability. Although his Saint Dragon had yet to reach the Dragon King's level, with the enhancement of plus 17, Lin Shen's recovery speed was not any slower than the Dragon King's when he used this move. At this time, an old and hoarse voice sounded. The student has really surpassed the master. Old Man Divine Sword was dressed in linen clothes and carried an ancient sword on his back. Lin Shen cupped his hands and smiled casually. Hello, Senior. Thank you for your help in dealing with the Sky High Sword King. You're welcome. Old Man Divine Sword nodded and squeezed out an unprecedented smile. Even if you don't need my help, it won't be a problem for you to kill him. Lin Shen is really the light of the human race in the sacred boundary. All of us sword cultivators owe our young friend Lin Shen a huge favor. Lin Shen opened the path of the sword for us. If you need anything in the future, just let us know. We won't hesitate to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of flames. At this time, the experts from the various grade 9 forces of the sword domain came forward to congratulate and thank him. Lin Shen smiled mockingly. Oh, you're willing to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of flames. All right, we're going to turn the sword domain upside down and release their fate plant. Let's go together. As soon as he said that, everyone from the sword domain opened their mouths and their eyelids twitched. Lin Shen smiled coquettishly. Swords and sabers belong to the same family. Since we're a family, we should be neat and tidy. Damn it, was this guy even human? He had just released the sword domain's fate plant, and now he was going to the sword domain? Was he serious? Taking down 2 domains in one day? Wasn't it good to be human? Lang Fanyun was happy to hear that, but he wanted to say something. My lord, isn't this too hasty? Should we retreat first? Lin Shen immediately put on a stern face and pretended to be serious. What are you talking about? What if they react and set up another trap, mobilizing experts to guard against us? If we fight then, we'll be a real hothead. I won't do such a stupid thing. Mr. Liu is right. Since we're going to do it, we should do it to the end. A man who dares to overturn everything is a true warrior. As soon as they heard that Lin Shun was going to take down the sword domain, the experts from the sword domain looked embarrassed. They were not afraid of the sword domain's experts, but if they were to take the risk and go to their headquarters, it would not be something that could be resolved with just a word of fight. The big shots of the sword domain all found excuses. Lin Shun, I suddenly remembered that there's something in the pavilion. Yes, our sword pavilion is on fire. Let's go back and put out the fire first. My disciple is suddenly injured. I have to hurry back and treat him. Lin Shun, come my Hao Ran Palace for tea when you're free. I just remembered that my wife is about to give birth. Lin Shun, I won't keep you company for now. My wife is giving birth to. Lin Shun, your wives are the same? Lin Ping and look at your cowardly faces. Chapter 1735. His clones swept across and collected the attribute light balls dropped by the Eternal Sword sect. Kaboom! A dragon aura soared into the sky as dragon roars sounded. Tens of thousands of dragon talismans released a divine light that covered the sky and shrouded everyone. Boom! 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 The wind and clouds changed. Endless spirit chi formed a vortex and gathered in the sky above the Eternal Sword sect, transforming into shadows of ancient divine dragons that roared at the sky. Elder Xian Yu said in surprise, "This is the birth of the Dragon King. This is..." Lin Shin was stunned at first before he was overjoyed. My divine dragon has finally broken through. Lin Shin looked at the divine dragon that was healing Lang Fanyan. The dragon aura within the dragon veins contained the mountains, rivers, sun, and moon. Every dragon vein glowed with a brand new vitality and power. It was as if a single breath of dragon aura could sweep away the sun, moon, and stars. Dragon King. A genuine Dragon King. If the divine dragon could only rely on a few exceptional abilities to contend with a Saint King before, then now, it could even fight a Saint King head-on. It could even gain the absolute upper hand. Its battle strength had risen by more than a level. Even the speed of healing Lang Fanyan's injuries had more than doubled. Looks like the Saint-level Blood Chi attribute obtained from Zhaoling Tian has allowed my divine dragon to break through its final limit. Lin Shin smiled like a rose. The divine dragon's breakthrough not only brought about a transformation in its battle strength, but also a great improvement in its ability to protect itself. It was no longer the same as before. However, Lin Shin couldn't be bothered with the remnants of the Eternal Sword sect. He looked up at the sky and transmitted his voice. Ling, are you ready? Xiaoling stepped out of the void and appeared in a green dress. She was beautiful and elegant like ripples in autumn. She bowed slightly. Master, the space tunnel is ready. We can take off at any time. Without another word, Lin Shin picked up Lang Fanyan and Fong Ling. He laughed and said, "Let's go. F** King's Saber Domain. Good things come in pairs. Since we're going to release our providence, the two domains should be neat." Elder Xian, you shook her head helplessly and followed him. Lin Ping and waved her little fists excitedly and said, "I wonder what treasures will be waiting for me in the next territory. I'm so high. I feel like my life has reached the peak." Elder Xian Yu was speechless when she saw Lin Shan turn a painful disaster into such a state. Why was it that every single person who was related to Lin Shan would become so abnormal? Whoosh! The spatial tunnel closed, and everyone disappeared. On the other side, the various domains of the sacred boundary. Sword cultivators of the world, heed my command. I am Lin Shan, and I am following the will of the sages of the way of the sword to inform all sword cultivators. From today onwards, the Tao of sword cultivators will no longer be restricted by karmic luck. Everyone on the Tao of the sword will be like a dragon. His grand and deep voice was soul-stirring, filled with lofty sentiments, and spread through the sword intent perception of every swordsman. Their sword intents became even purer. An array of light appeared on the dark path. Lin Shun? Could it be that Lin Shun who challenged the Genesis era? Has he released his karmic luck? My sword intent has met the end. Rumor has it that the karmic luck of the sword has been sealed, and it has something to do with the sky-bearing Sword King, Zhao Tian. Could it be that there is someone here who dares to challenge the #1 Sword King of the Sword Domain? If there is no torch flame, he will be the only light. The Shang stage, Sword Intent. Ha, my Tao of the Sword. Lin Shun, what a good guy. I'm willing to call him the most arrogant. Ha ha. It seems that all the sword cultivators in the sacred boundary owe Lin Chun a favor. Different voices rose and fell in various parts of the sacred boundary. This day would definitely be a milestone in the history of the Way of the Sword. In the heavens beyond heaven, the round was like a millstone that slowly rotated. There were 5 figures sitting cross-legged here. The 5 of them were surrounded by an aura of transcendence and transcendence. They stood above all other living beings. Some of them were surrounded by destruction. The illusions of ancient beasts, such as the Azure Dragon, True Dragon, and Kuan Punk, were destroyed. It was as if there were supreme beasts lurking in their bodies. Their chi was like a river, and their blood was like an ocean. The white-robed man in the center suddenly opened his eyes. His aura was terrifying, and his physique contained the mountains, rivers, sun, and moon. 5 colored clouds rose above his head, and his saint force was like a thunderstorm. His gaze tore through the void as he stared into the distance. The person beside him had a majestic physique. He was covered in 9 layers of scorching suns, and blood flames surged. Waves of yang flames swept through the universe, and a sea of fire burned through the 9 heavens and 10 lands, swallowing the world. The white-robed youth opposite him was covered in a saber, and its sharpness lingered. When he opened his eyes, he looked over and slashed open the great Tao of the void, triggering the powerful saber intent to shine with a dragon's roar. There was even an illusion of 3 heads and 6 arms, 6 eyes and 4 ears. It was extremely demonic, and its pair of eyes were as deep as the galaxy. When it stared into the distant void, the space suddenly collapsed. The last person was like a falling sunflower. He had a demonic temperament, and he was extraordinarily handsome. His peach blossom eyes were as beautiful as a woman's, but there was a cold, murderous aura between his brows. When he glanced over, a falling star disintegrated. These 5 people were all legendary figures in the top 10 of the Saint Talent list. 8th on the Saint Talent list, top saber of the world, Nangong Xinyuan. 7th on the Saint Talent list, Evil Lord Sunflower, Jin Wuxia. 6th on the Saint Talent list, Evil Moon, Heavy Ear. 5th on the Saint Talent list, 9 Sun, Saint King, Jin Tai. 4th on the Saint Talent list, Tyrant Lord Yang Qianjin. The 5 legendary figures on the Saint Talent list woke up from their seclusion at the same time. When they looked into the distant void, they were shocked, confused, and surprised. The sacred boundary was ever-changing, and they had never frowned. The killing of ordinary experts could no longer affect their situation. Their cultivation had basically broken away from the sacred boundary, and they were pursuing a higher realm in the Saint King realm. Providence was one of their fastest shortcuts. Providence was connected to the heavenly axiom of the universe. Those who accumulated enough providence could turn misfortune into luck and turn adversity into prosperity. When they wanted to explore more opportunities, they needed to accumulate more providence in their bodies. And here, it involved an important secret. That was the best supreme-grade providence spiritual plant. Every top 10 on the Saint Talent list needed a supreme-grade providence spiritual plant. Ordinary providence spiritual plants could only absorb providence on their own to produce treasures and resources with corresponding characteristics. Supreme-grade providence spiritual plants could partially control providence. Top supreme-grade providence spiritual plants could even accumulate providence. This was a very terrifying thing. There was a world of difference between this and upper-grade and mid-grade providence spiritual plants that could only absorb providence. This was also the reason why supreme-grade providence spiritual plants were so rare. Those who were protected by Providence far surpassed ordinary geniuses. And beside Lin Chun, there was also someone who could control Providence, the Scarlet Fairy. Lin Chun didn't really know about her existence. However, that was a story for another time. At this moment, what made this group of saint talents, who wouldn't lose their composure even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of them, was that the providence of the Sword Realm had actually collapsed. It was as if the person who served you every day was a devastatingly beautiful woman, but suddenly changed to Ruhua one day. Then, even Ruhua was gone in the end. In this sacred boundary, there was still a human who dared to have designs on the top 10 on the Saint Talent list. The providence of the Sword Realm has collapsed. What is Zhao Lingtian doing? No, his Sword in 10 imprint has already shattered. He can't be more dead. What a good-for-nothing. To think that our aristocratic families specially gathered Providence for him. He can't even guard a gate of Providence. What kind of trash is this? The three Saint Talents looked at each other, and the contempt in their words was extremely cold and arrogant. Suddenly, a voice accompanied by the shattered power of Providence slowly spread to the sky beyond heaven. All sword cultivators in the world listen to my orders. I am Lin Chun, and I follow the will of the sages of the Sword Tao to inform all sword cultivators. From now on, the path of sword cultivators will no longer be restricted by Providence. Everyone in the Sword Tao will be like a dragon. These words immediately attracted the attention of the 5 Saint Talents. They suddenly stood up and stepped into the void. Their eyes were filled with killing intent, and they couldn't wait to skin him alive. Yang Qianjin, the leader of the 5th on the Saint Talent list, almost squeezed the words out of his teeth. Lin Chun. At this moment, the 5 legends on the Saint Talent list stared at Lin Chun at the same time. Sacred Boundary, Ancient Realm. A similar scene played out. The vast Azure City was strangely showing signs of time and space stop. All the humans stared at each other as if they had seen a ghost. The space suddenly stopped. It was simply a godlike method. Even the heaven-opening stage powerhouse guarding this place, who was a 9th-layer saint, couldn't move. When the void stopped, the voice with the surging power of Providence sounded. All sword cultivators in the world listened to my orders. I am Lin Chun. This voice caused 2 curious and elegant voices to appear in the void that was frozen in silence. Lin Chun? Let's go and take a look. The next moment, time and space stop was lifted. Everyone in Azure City immediately regained their freedom. Everyone panted as if they were facing a great enemy. Even the heaven-opening powerhouse overseeing Azure revealed an unprecedented look of fear and shock. Could it be a Saint King? No, there shouldn't be such a terrifying Saint King. Could it be God? You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.